All right, we good, Susan? All right, cool. All right, it's a little after 6:30. We got the presence of the planning board. Thank you all for coming. It's a good opportunity for us to hear from you, what you've been working on, what you're seeing out there, and how we can sort of collaborate to make everything, work together the best we can. But with that said, I know you guys have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to turn it over to Chairwoman Maria Mack. All right, this time I'm going to hand it over to you, Maria. So go ahead.
Thanks very much, and thank you, council members, for inviting us to this work session. We're hoping that we can continue to do this on a regular basis based on everyone's scheduling. I think that after conversations with Jamie, Director of Planning, we talked about sort of 5 major issues that perhaps we could discuss unless the council has additional items they wish to discuss this evening. And I think one of the things that comes to mind on a regular basis for us is that there's generally an agreement within the community that most people don't want South Kingstown to be anywhere USA. We want to keep what's special. We want to embrace our specific villages within the town as we grow and improve. We want to be very much mindful of the fact that we do have our own distinct and unique community, which differs from other communities in the state and elsewhere. And in so doing, it's important to improve upon haphazard development patterns of the past. I'm sure that everyone is aware of when Will Green came in January, I think it was, and talked about the URI student collaboration that was done for the Old Tower Hill Road area. That was kind of the 1970s haphazard development pattern. And good land use planning seeks to improve upon that so that things happen in a more planned, organized way, yet still allow for creativity and flexibility. So the kind of the list that I have based on conversations with Jamie is Old Tower Hill Road, housing, affordable housing, adaptive reuse, Main Street, Saugatucket Park River, legislative changes that have occurred in this session, and scenic stewardship plan, which is a very quick item. And I know that in the time that we have this evening, we may not get to all of them, but we certainly want to have a conversation with the council and get a sense of what the council has as their priorities and talk a little bit about the work that we have done. Several years ago, the town created an annual action agenda. This is something that both the council and the planning board set up at the beginning of every year so that we would at least have a basis from which to begin our planning for the year. Sometimes some of the items in those plans fell by the wayside because something urgent had come up. For example, medical marijuana, as you recall, took up a considerable amount of time for both the planning board and the council. So sometimes things don't happen within a year. We then renamed it the Biennial Action Agenda because it was much more reasonable to figure that you're going to get these 10 or 15 items done in a 2-year time period rather than necessarily 1 year. But nevertheless, I think we all feel that it's good to have that basic plan, and then it has some inherent flexibility which allows us to modify when necessary. And of course, we have regular meetings in which we review projects, but we also have work sessions in which we plan for the future and talk about whether it's ordinances or changes. That's when we have the ability to do long range as well as short-term planning. So I guess starting with Old Tower Hill Road, I don't know if Jamie wants to chat a little bit about that. I know that recently the time frame for the RFP for that closed. I believe it was last Friday. We do have it on our agenda tomorrow night for our work session with the idea that even if we do not yet have a consultant on board, we feel as though we have been very anxious to get going on this project, and we would like to begin having conversations that will actually assist the consultants once they come on board and start to really talk about what the area is, what can happen in that area, what the constraints are, what the opportunities are. And with any kind of planning policy, it's really always about opportunities, challenges, and needs. So I don't know, Jamie, if you want to say a couple of words about that, and then comments from planning board and council.
Yes, and sorry for my attire. I am coming from an event that had a 4-hour rain delay today, so I had planned on being a little more dressed appropriately, dressed for the weather today. Just to Maria's point, we did do a request for qualifications. It's actually an RFQ versus an RFP. Under Rhode Island law, if you do a request for proposal, you need a very defined scope of services at the forefront, and then everybody puts a price tag to those scope of services, and we kind of have a project that may be moving a little bit as we get creative with it. So we did a request for qualifications. The request for qualifications was sent out a little over 4 weeks ago. The town uses BidNet. In addition to BidNet, we put it on the Connecticut APA, Rhode Island APA, Massachusetts APA, Urban Land Institute was sent the RFQ, Congress New Urbanism was sent the RFQ, as well as National American Planning Association was sent the RFQ. And most consulting firms are members of BidNet. When I was in the private sector, we were members of BidNet. It's an annual subscription, but you punch in planning, land use, and every bid that comes out nationally or even regionally, you will get an email requesting your solicitation in response to that. We also contacted Dover and Cole, Gibbs Planning, Placemakers, Opticos, Yuletide, Tool Designs, Code Studios, DPZ, Allison Ramsey, Beta, Union Studios, and Halloran and Sage. Those are some of the leading planning and urban design engineering firms in the country, as well as the upper northeast coast. As Maria mentioned, the 29th was a close for the RFQ. We received 3. We received one from Dover and Cole. We received one from Stantec out of Massachusetts, and we received one from Beta, along with an architectural and engineering firm also. And Beta's out of Massachusetts. They do have some local individuals in the Rhode Island area. So we are going through those. Once we've gone through those, we will put a committee together in the next week or so. We will then go through a ranking system, and then once there is a selected 1 or 2, potentially interview 1 or both of the 2. There's only 3. We could potentially interview all 3. And if there was a clear-cut leader in those 3, we would enter into discussions associated with defining the final scope of services and coming up with the cost for that scope of services. We have a little over $100,000 that's accessible to us. I know council may have some questions of delays and timing. We did not do this in the fall or early winter. We did not have access to the financial resources. We had $30,000 late in this fiscal year, but the bulk of the fiscal money came in July 1. So we're gearing up for that. Again, some of the consultants' responses are very creative about having boots on the ground in town, and being able to have residents drop in and out of a charrette process versus just a consultant doing it from a distance. So that's where we are with regards to that. I don't know if the council has any quick questions on the RFQ.
I got a few questions. So the committee that will be ranking the different consultants here, who is the makeup of that committee? Why does it take more than 1 week period of time to do these rankings?
The second part of that I didn't catch.
I'm trying to understand the process by which a consultant be selected. I'm trying to understand that further. You said a committee will be formed, and they will perform rankings as to the different consultants based on the responses of the RFQs.
Yes.
And that'll take about a few week time frame. And then from that point, if one stands out amongst the rest, he'll do interviews and then.
So we can rank them hopefully in the next 2 weeks. We would have interviews within a week or two. Again, we may choose to do it in a in a virtual, because there's distance for all the consultants. We may bring them in virtually, but we did this on our last RFQ. We do it internal. We had 5 department heads on that committee. This one, I will ask those same 5 department heads, as well as the chairman of the planning board, to be on that review committee. So we're trying to keep it to 6.
So is this typical of hiring a consultant? You set up a whole committee to do rankings, and then upon that, you do interviews, and then upon that, you select one?
In some communities, it is at the discretion of the planning director in association with the town manager's office to bring on the consultant. But from my standpoint, I would feel much more comfortable having a committee of both my peers as department heads as well as a member of the planning board, so that when a consultant is selected, there is less likelihood that someone criticizes the process at the local level. I don't expect a consultant to criticize the selection process. My concern is vetting it at the local level to make sure it was a fair and open process and the planning board was involved.
I agree. I think that's a good idea and way to do it.
Yeah,
I mean, the more eyes you have on it, the better the community's going to feel. So,
and I've read several memos where multiple people evaluated the bids. I remember the Weston and Sampson contract was vetted by several staff, and then they went back, and so I think maybe it's just a small detail that I hadn't seen. I don't know.
My only resistance is the balancing of the need to get this done and the length of time the process will take to just select one without even figuring out the scope of the services yet.
I understood. Again, the most we can condense this, Rory, we will try to do that. If I can get the 5 together, and again, I'm going to give them a week to read, and then we have to find a date. If I can give them 7 days to read it, or a full calendar week, and then we can meet the following Monday, that's an 8-day process. So,
I think they understand the urgency, so.
Jamie, do I understand you to say that you didn't have the funds to do this before July 1?
we only had partial funds July 1, so until the budget was passed by the full council mid-spring, we did not have full funds internally. Since I came here 3 years ago, I had a roughly $360,000 ask for planning initiatives. That was put into the capital program and delayed 2 years. So with your generosity in this budget cycle, you put $80,000 in the planning consulting funds for the department. I had access to 30. So July 1, I have $120,000 in that account. I'm also trying to cobble a few pieces of other financial resources together. And just understand there's kind of 2 phases to this. There's the visualization and understanding of what you want Old Tower Hill to look like and be in the short, near, and long-term future, and then how you codify that. I could show you picture and picture and picture of a town that codifies a project and some god-awful buildings that meet the code because they have little 1-foot bump outs and the roof line changes by a foot. But
Hold on, Jamie, we got limited time. I want to
Okay,
afford
sorry.
the planning board all the time they can.
Thank you. As you may know from when Professor Green came to speak with the council, I was involved with the project 9 years ago when it began and have been rather anxious to see it come to fruition, both the design aspect and the zoning code aspect. And the board would very much like to kind of get started on this. We have quite a diverse talent within our board, and I think that we can begin the process even before a consultant has been chosen to discuss what the specifics are of the area, what we would like to see, what we don't want to see, what we want to avoid. I mean, there are obviously challenges in that area and in the town as a whole. Things like lack of integration between the various commercial districts and residential. We would like to see true mixed use occur there. It's going to take, I think, a lot of thought and a lot of effort, but this isn't something that hasn't been done before in other communities. So this is a good step forward, and I think everyone would like to see an improvement in efficiency as we move forward without compromising the effectiveness of a project such as this. Again, I think that there are certain areas that the board would like to see improvements upon, opportunities such as, and this goes beyond the Old Tower Hill Road project, you know, allowing for creativity and design, having flexibility, having the ability to have improved communication with not just a specific area and consultants, but with all applicants that come before us that we work with. And of course, we understand that there are different assets and needs within the community. Wakefield is different from Matunic and different from West Kingston. There are some similarities, but there are also some differences. Is there anyone on the board who wants to make any comments with regard to the Old Tower Hill Road project?
The only thing I would say is there is a need of urgency here. I think I remember a meeting before COVID, like years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like it's taking a really long time.
Right.
Yes. The next thing on my list is housing, both affordable, adapted reuse, and housing in general. I think everyone is well aware of the fact that both within the state and nationally, housing is a big issue. The urban areas have even more of a need for housing. We differ from those urban areas and even from urban areas within Rhode Island in that we don't necessarily have a mass transit system, so we need to be more concerned with parking, safety, circulation, traffic, and as we move forward, there really should be a good set of eyes that look upon these types of issues. So it isn't just, let's build 3 apartment complexes. You need to be concerned about stormwater. You need to be concerned about traffic, ingress, egress. There are a lot of different factors, so planning isn't always as cut and dried as you might think. As everyone is well aware, with climate change upon us, we are subject to more drought, to more stormwater issues, and we need to plan for those. In fact, often, if you look at some of the approvals that the Planning Board has brought forward, they have many conditions of approval because what happens or can happen is that if a year or 2 down the road, those new residents have issues with stormwater, they don't go back to the engineer who designed the plans, they come back to the town, and we hear about it. So we have to be very cognizant of those issues as things are designed, and that's where DPS is very important in terms of helping us to really look at the designs and how impactful they might be and how they might hold up. DEM has a specific criteria for the 100-year storm, which is something that we utilize in the calculations. However, this has not been updated for several years, so what is being designed is not always up to the standard of the world that we live in now. So that's one of our challenges. I do think that given the fact that we do have these opportunities and challenges, we also have needs that require us to be practical and realistic. And things like tourism that we don't hear about very often, sense of place, which can be sometimes a little difficult to comprehend. All of those things are part and parcel of kind of the world of planning. And of course, the financial aspect. The town council is very aware of financial implications. You have a capital budget. You have to deal with these financial issues. All of this planning, things like sidewalks, things like improvements to streetscapes and so on, they cost money. So those are things that I think going forward, having conversations with the council about how realistic and practical some ideas that may come forward might be. Yes?
Hi, Paul Jordan. I was on the Affordable Housing Collaborative many years ago, I think back when Vin Murray was the planner. And one of the things that I've been asking for, even back then, and we weren't able to make it a priority for the planning board this year just because there were so many things on our list to choose from, but to look at zoning for multifamily housing. I mean, we get lots of applications in town for subdivisions where maybe we get 4 or 5 or 10 affordable units at 120% AMI. None of that is going to build us out to where we need to be for affordable housing. I think multifamily apartments, the large apartment complexes, the sort of thing that you see on Route 2 in Warwick, are not terribly appealing in South Kingstown, but 4 or 6 unit multifamily units, that can be integrated into a neighborhood. And I think looking at some of those transitional zones between commercial and residential areas, the area behind Job Lot where we're going to get some new housing going in. What's the name of that street?
Holly
On Holly Street. But I think there are a lot of places in town where maybe we could look at that ability to add some additional multifamily zoning to get those kinds of units in, to get some apartments, and get some affordable units at an 80% AMI. I mean, I'll just say I have a friend she's 55 years old, her 2 kids had just moved out, to go to school. She qualifies for 80% rental unit, couldn't find one, and now she's living in a 200 square foot studio, and all of her furniture's in storage. I think looking at zoning, if we can make that a priority, looking at zoning for multifamily is going to get us, I think, closer to where we need to be for affordable housing.
Thanks. Anyone else? Robin, use the mic, though. Is your mic on over there?
So I would just add that with the conditions that the planning board has to agree or disagree with a developer, the most we can ever get is a 25% of the development would be AMI, LMI, sorry. And so we're never going to meet our goal of 10% that way. We're just getting more and more housing and never meeting that goal. And maybe one solution to help South Kingston meet its obligation would be to take some property that the town owns, maybe like closed schools, and just make it flat out affordable living and get us to a responsible state of closer to 10%. So we're not, having to accept what other things are being offered to us because we're still not getting there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, one of the frustrating things for the planning board is the comprehensive permit process, which is something that is allowed by the state. In this process, an applicant can ask for whatever density they might think is appropriate beyond what we have within our zoning ordinance, but the reality is that it's 75% market rate and 25% affordable. So the math doesn't really work if you want to get to 10%. And what other communities have experienced in terms of success is working with a nonprofit community, such as there's a church community housing group out of Newport, Habitat for Humanity, in which they work together and ideally, when the town has property, build a project that's 100% affordable. We had a small Habitat project in Kingston off of Old North Road. It 100% affordable, reasonable AMI, area median income, and they actually did a design competition to design the houses. And that kind of thing works really well. I was involved, and Jamie as well, a couple of years ago. Roger Williams University had one of their architecture classes, and the professor used a parcel of land in South Kingstown and did a design and had the students design buildings. It was a great experience, and it's something that could actually be emulated somewhere, anywhere in South Kingstown. So it's collaborations like that, looking for those collaborations that are really important, creating partnerships, because obviously the funding is slightly different when you're dealing with a nonprofit entity. There is grant money out there, but again, it takes a little time and a little more effort. But those types of projects have been very successful, and they've resulted in a high percentage of 100% of affordable units in the designation that's needed, as Paul said, 80% AMI, not 120.
One other thought. Go ahead. Short-term rentals, I know other communities, I think Newport and Warwick are looking at this, and I know it's fraught with potential legal issues, but just talking to my neighbors around town, the number of short-term rentals in town, and you know, those are all homes or apartments that could be rented 12 months out of the year if they weren't being rented to vacationers, and I realize there are issues to be worked on there, but that I think is another thing that we could be looking at if there's a way forward on that.
The other thought that comes to mind that I've been thinking about for a while, you hear people talk about what happened to starter homes. There was an article in the New York Times a few months ago that was very good, where you used to have pretty simple homes that were affordable, that were small, that didn't have 4 bedrooms. Why can't we do something like either create a starter home project on an adaptive reuse area, or create a zone that would be different from the cottage zoning that would be for starter homes, where you have X number of bedrooms, X square footage that's not an accessory dwelling unit, but a standalone starter home, and you would create a community of starter homes. Nobody's talking about that. I think we should investigate it.
I think that sounds really interesting, and I think, I saw you say it, and Pete looked up, so I'm thinking like Pete's crunching something in his head, if that's even feasible. No?
I think the town has done a really good job of making this a desirable place to live.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
I think it's a thing we've done. I don't know how to, fix this problem, right? No way. I don't like the idea of taking a school and putting all the low to moderate income housing in one spot, like it should be
Right.
distributed through the
Right.
community. I don't know what the answer is.
Right.
The starter home is great idea and concept.
But then does it become like that's where that person lives, or that type of economic?
Yeah, I look at people buying these homes and they're
Yeah,
paying an outrageous amount of money.
yeah,
They are.
yeah.
To live, we've done a good job.
I was just sent something, Peaked Rock Road, and maybe 25 years ago, those homes were 130,000, and there's a home for sale for 599. And so in 25 years, it's 4 times, it's gone up 4 times, and that was built as more affordable, probably right at the, right?
Density is the issue. And
Yeah, right. Exactly, and then the push and the pull is, the more dense it is, it comes back to that original value, which we all talk about. We like the sense of place, we like, they're in conflict. We like our open space, we like this, but to get what we need more affordable housing. We're gonna have to compromise on density, and then with density comes infrastructure needs and traffic and people complaining about how busy it is. So it's tough to be a great place to live, but I think we all strive to still make it be that what we want.
And there are smart growth policies that have been enacted in other parts of the country. Create compact development, development that is accessible to schools, stores, and so on, having the infrastructure, having water and sewer, and be mindful of our capacity to have enough water, to have clean enough water, and so on.
Okay,
You can go.
if you have, is yours a quick question?
Is it on this?
Well, it's on the discussion regarding affordable housing. And I think one of the things is that we all know we have the goal of 10%, and that it's not an easy goal to meet, but I don't think we can let perfect be the enemy of good. And I would like to know a bit more about why the board voted against the 70-unit apartment complex with 18 affordable units, which that would be 25%.
I think that's
Is that like a subsequent
That's
issue?
under appeal, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's
Yeah.
something we can discuss, unfortunately.
no.
Okay.
So I just want to go back, because what Maria said at the beginning, I certainly feel, and I'm wondering if everyone else feels, that we don't want to be like Anytown USA, and we do want what's built to sort of fit with the character. Because the planning board ultimately takes some of its direction from the town council. Ultimately, we would say, please work on these things, or please continue to support this idea. So for me, I personally feel that we don't want to be anything, like, we don't just want anything, because I.
No, but if we
Oh,
don't
I'm talking
approve
about a different-
anything,
I'm talking about a different topic.
okay.
Not about affordable housing, about projects. So like, for example, I drove up 108 just the other day, and I looked at the Dollar General, and look how pretty the exterior is. Most Dollar Generals are black
It
and
is a nice-looking Dollar
so
General.
that's an excellent example of working with the project to make it look like it fits in the community. And I don't want to pick on another development, but I look at possibly CubeSmart, and it's just a big concrete square, and I wonder, did it have to look that way? Could we have made it look differently? So those are two foils to sort of represent the values that I think, I know I hold. I hope others do, because I want.
I hold it too, but if we keep telling everybody that they can't do anything, then they're just going to be able to do anything.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh.
So the second thing that Maria said at the beginning, or at some point, was efficiency versus, what did you say, effectiveness?
Without compromising effectiveness.
Right. We need to meet what I kind of look at a lot of things that Pete says about we need to build stuff and we need to move things forward. I feel like that's sort of your flavor when you're on the planning board. So we need to build efficiency, but we can't compromise that other value of what we want the town to look like. So we have to marry those competing forces in a way that's good. And that's what I think. I would like to look at the ways that we can make it easier to build projects without compromising quality. And that's where I feel like that goes back to the planning board.
And without getting into specifics, I don't think we've denied anything for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And we've approved things that we know were not perfect, as you alluded to, but that would give us some housing. We need to find a way to get beyond that 25, 75%.
Somebody said, one of the gentlemen said, we weren't able to make it a priority this year. And I was just wondering what that was in reference to. Was that in reference to affordable housing? Because that's our priority. At least that's my priority, and that is what the council.
Yeah, when we put together the planning board work plan for the year, we had a whole list of things to choose from, and each member of the planning board ranked them. And there were so many important things on there that zoning issue just ended up falling out. I don't think that anyone thought it was unimportant. It just, there were other things that rose to the top. And that's why I say again, maybe there's another way to get there. Maybe if it's a council priority rather than a planning board priority to look at zoning.
Right.
And that's exactly why the Old Tower Hill Road project could be so impactful, because it provides opportunities for housing and commercial growth, integrated, mixed use. You have water, you have sewer, you have easy access to roadways. That's where it makes sense. That makes it easier and less expensive to have something on a larger scale. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight. You change the zoning, but you hope that it's a catalyst. And when you have that first person, that first property owner that says, okay, I can now build at a greater height, create more density, I have to make sure that I'm not polluting the area to a greater degree. All you need is that first person to start, and others will follow. And that's what's happened in other communities.
I think a great example here is, like, if you look at Fournier Estates, right? Lots of low-income housing in one spot. They don't have washers and dryers. They don't have access to a place to wash and dry their clothes. So does it really make sense to just put something anywhere? It has to be strategic. It has.
So
But not 100% affordable. We don't want to segregate people. We want
right,
to incorporate
we don't want
them.
that either.
Of course, but it has to make sense where it goes so that they can access the
Right.
necessities and
If they're not on if they're not on a public transportation, or there's not enough parking, they have responsibilities like to make the project work. And I do think that the law doesn't really solve the problem. Like, I think it was Paul who said, we're never going to get there, because every time we build 10, we only build 2 affordable or 3 affordable. So we always are chasing ourselves. So we have to look at it differently. I think Pete was going to say something, so I feel like you were, and then we went somewhere else.
I just thought somewhat in construction people say, I want it fast, I want it cheap, and I want it great. And you can't, you can only pick two. And I
You can
feel
only,
sometimes when
okay.
you're saying these things, like, not to contradict what Maria said, but like, when you want it to meet the requirements and be like all these things, you can't have them all.
Right. So I think most people would say it's extremely slow to get something built, and they say they're extremely frustrated because of the process. So I'm wondering, I also wonder how much negotiation could happen before it gets to you, so you get the project, and or maybe the planning staff has said, do a few little tweaks. I don't know how much the planning staff negotiates or talks with the developer, because maybe that would help get the project to you in a way that would be closer to moving it forward.
Yeah, if we could create our own overlay zones so that applicants don't go directly to the comprehensive permit process, we would have a lot more flexibility. Things could move a lot faster. We are actually constrained by state law with regard to the comprehensive permits.
Yeah.
So thus, the rationale for creating a customized, so to speak, overlay zone that gives everyone flexibility, the ability to negotiate and so on. And by the way, the Dollar General took time. We worked very hard on that project, and they were willing to negotiate with us. The Hampton Inn is another example of getting more of a custom type design that ultimately is a flagship for that particular company, that they can say, look what we built in South Kingstown. It's much better than a lot of the generic plans.
So I have a,
I think just one thing I just want to add, we do spend a lot of time on that. Like I was thinking the Dollar General, how long it takes. But that takes away from other priorities. So when we say
Right.
we don't have enough time to do things,
Right.
other things are that.
So,
Can we get through the Dollar General faster so that we have more time to talk about affordable housing or other things? I think those are the things that I think we need to talk about.
that's exactly my question. Like, how could we improve the process? Like, could it be done? I know that there's some things that the planning staff could maybe improve upon so that when it comes to you, it's not your 2 or 3 hour meeting trying to hash it out. Maybe you're both, I don't know. Is
Yes.
there a way?
TRC is a part of it, and pre-application, and then having that initial meeting that generally is at the staff level, which I think is probably what Jamie's going to talk about.
Yeah, and again, start the clock on me, because I could talk for 15, but I'll try and keep it
Start the clock.
to 2 minutes or so. But
2 minutes, Jamie.
But to Peter DeStefano's point, that it's actually a sales proverb. I can do it fast, I can do it great, or I can do it cheap, but you only can pick two. So I can do it fast and great, but it's not going to be cheap. I can do it cheap and great, but it's not going to be fast. So a lot can be said for it. And what the development side is always looking for is some type of certainty in the regulatory process. We have Euclidean zoning right now. We don't have very specific architectural standards. There are some overriding objectives. But the goal of going through Old Tower Hill is, from my perspective, laying the groundwork in one area that can be replicated in other areas. It would have been a much simpler process with Dollar General if you had architectural standards built into your regulations. So when they initially came in and said, what type of store do I need to build? You turned to page 6 and it had 4 examples of appropriate style commercial buildings. You didn't have that. So on occasion it bogs down. You also have a 2-step process for certain things. There's what's called DPR review, and that was a special use permit. So it went to the planning board. Planning board made a favorable recommendation to the zoning board. The zoning board ultimately initially denied that project. Then it was appealed, and then the appeal was settled, and then they moved forward with the project. Rhode Island's process is somewhat complicated and convoluted, and it's in some instances an 18-month to 2-year process. Other states, other political divisions can do the same thing Rhode Island takes 2 years to do in 130 days. Now the developer spends $500,000 up front, not knowing whether they're going to get the permits, and in Rhode Island you do a little bit at a time. And your financial exposure is less until you know there's some certainty. What we're trying to do as a department working with the planning board is build certainty into the process. But to Peter's point, you can't have all, in a perfect world, you can have all 3.
Right.
I don't think we can.
So can we can we ask the planning board to work on some design standards? Because would that be helpful?
It's definitely on the list, and we would very much appreciate an endorsement of such.
I agree. I mean, I think
Okay.
we have to give them a clear, the standards we can argue about, but I think we need to give them a clear thing, so when they come in, they can hand it to
Yes.
us, or hand it to Jamie, and then it can come right
Yes.
through. I think a good thing is we are not an easy board, and we have a name for that. So they come, and we have this like negotiation back and forth, where I think if it was clearer, they wouldn't come with a start, so that
Right.
they say, oh, they're gonna make me reduce, I'm reducing, my plan was to reduce it anyway, I just did that.
Right.
I thought you guys were gonna make me do
Right, right. They come in and they ask for 150, knowing we're going to get negotiated down to 100 or whatever.
I'd rather just skip those months.
Me too. And I think everyone would. So I don't know if everyone's following to the same level of design regs. So I think that sounds like I'm hearing like we definitely want good. Everybody agrees on good. And we would like it to be attractive, and not cheap, but maybe we have to give a little on something. So, right, we do want it a little fast. So I think the design standards would help it go faster,
Yes.
right? And
Do you need us, do they need our authorization to do
Yeah,
it?
clear.
Do they need our authorization to do it, or can they just do it, create the design standards?
They could take it on as a task. It always helps the council to encourage and support so that the planning board isn't just on their own doing something, that they have the support of the council to take
And I
those
think he
initiatives.
probably also means financial support.
oh,
All right.
we'll see. I gotta ask Jim. I know you're working on a number of other things besides the typical development. So I know that I asked that we look at medical marijuana and sort of look at the zoning to match the retail. I think that's something that's coming to
We
you.
already did that.
I think that's at the staff level.
That's at the staff level.
Right.
Should be going to council within 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. So that's coming to you. Thank you. And there was something else that I think you're working on.
So we have been involved in a peripheral sense with the Main Street, and it was Main Street, Saugatucket Park, Saugatucket River, which was a worthwhile endeavor. We hope that that will continue to move forward. It's one of the things that when we had a community meeting 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was widespread support. I mean, enthusiasm and support. Something you don't always see at every meeting, and that's something that we should embrace and follow through with. And obviously, Main Street is under the microscope at this point in terms of economic development because there are ARPA funds available. There is a Main Street USA program that the Economic Development Committee has been asking for support for a number of years. There was talk of a potential Rhode Island a state program that unfortunately, a pilot program that did not pass in terms of legislation this time around, but hopefully in the future that will be the case because we are very fortunate to have Main Street, the park, and the river in that contiguous area. And in fact, the town of Westerly has done a very similar, slightly larger project managing stormwater and traffic patterns to enhance their Main Street, and they have gotten quite a lot of grant money for that project. Something worthy of copying.
Maria, I want to ask a few specific questions regarding affordable housing since we're still on the topic here. I think it's important to also sort of reflect on the things we've done to evaluate, are they working, are they not? Now, obviously, it is a top priority of the council to increase the supply of affordable housing. I don't think the goal is get to 10% because I agree it's impossible to build out, but I think the goal should be just increase the supply. Now, some of the things we've done was enact the cottage zoning ordinance. We also did a tax regulation with the auxiliary dwelling unit.
Yep.
And I want to sort of seek out how has that been going? Are we seeing any success there? And based on that, are there other areas of town for which we could do an increased density type of zoning to allow for that?
Some of that goes back to the future of the Old Tower Hill Road project because that presents opportunities. The cottage zoning, we have not had, I don't think, we've had a little bit of interest, but we have not had any projects come through that particular set of zoning regulations. We have a really good accessory dwelling unit ordinance. I think that most people are not aware of that. And I was very concerned this past session when there was potential for the General Assembly to completely override and make considerably less effective parameters in their version of what an ADU bill should be. So that is a concern, because we came up with something pretty unique that has a tax credit associated with it that allows flexibility for both the homeowner and the future resident of that ADU. So we need to find a way to make sure we retain that local authority.
Does that state law preempt our local regulation?
It didn't pass.
Oh, it didn't pass.
Speaking of local authority and state law, the council, maybe tomorrow, will be receiving a memo from our office that I know the planning department has seen. I'm not sure if the planning board has seen it yet, but the memo details all the changes that were recently signed into law that take effect for the most part January 1st. So the planning board over the next, I'll say, 6 months is going to have a lot of work to do, because all of those state laws, the Zoning Enabling Act was, the process that, that was mentioned about going to the zoning board and then the planning board. It's now going to be one-stop shopping. That's going to be mandatory. There's a number of changes that are going to have to be enacted. Our office will work with the planning department staff on that. But some of the problems we're discussing will be, I think, addressed at least in part by the state law.
And I think it's an 11-page memo, am I correct? Yeah, so there's a lot.
Perfect segue to talk about your understanding of the new legislation, how it's going to affect us, how it can help us as far as improving affordable housing, how it's going to hurt us as far as don't have as much discretion. I feel like a good opportunity to talk about that.
It does not give us more flexibility. It has quite a few mandates that are designed to speed the process up, but it also turns the process on its head, and instead of using the normal procedure that everyone is familiar with, master plan, preliminary, final, it changes it to this development plan review in certain cases. It also mandates number of bedrooms in a comprehensive permit, that you have to have 3 bedrooms in every unit, which isn't super flexible. I mean, if you have an old mill and you want to do loft and single bedroom units, it's, so you'll need an entire meeting just to understand what the changes that have been made and how they'll impact us as a community and every other community for that matter. There are reporting requirements. It's going to be pretty onerous. There has been a lot of talk about several $1 million coming from the governor's office, but it sounds as though that will flow through Rhode Island Housing, and we're not really sure how we're going to be able to get some of those funds.
Okay, so a couple months ago, I did ask that we organize another meeting with the planning board where we only talk about housing, and I think it's probably a good idea that because we keep saying it's really important to us, that we request that we organize another meeting sooner rather than later. I mean, probably early September, because I'm looking at, we only have 3 meetings
Great
left
idea.
before Labor Day, but maybe, it sounds like we're all nodding for that. I think we should do that. It's certainly important to us, and you have so much work to do, and we can work through that. The second thing I want to talk about was the accessory dwelling units. I did run into someone, I'm sure you all know this person, but I won't say their name. They were building an accessory dwelling unit, and they had no idea that this regulation existed. I followed up with Jamie, who sent me an FAQ about ADUs. I think, Jamie, if you could send it to all the members of the council so that we can use it in our networks, because if I said their name, every one of us knows who this is. So we need to promote it as much as possible, because they had no concept that this even existed. So I think that that is one area where we all need to take responsibility. It's only one tool, it's a very small tool, but for somebody who's building an accessory dwelling unit on their family's property, that's huge. So I put that back out there to follow up on your question. And I think we need to talk about how if we care about housing, we need to continue to talk about it in a meaningful way and help the planning board get through the changes that we need to see.
And as Jamie said, with appropriate design standards and drawings, there's
Yes.
nothing like a visual to communicate to the public at large what could be instead of 10 pages of text. Well, you know, if you're an attorney, that's well and good, but
Sorry,
to
Amy.
the average person, it doesn't always make a lot of sense. So we need to
Exactly. Exactly.
communicate more effectively and use visuals whenever possible, I think.
All right, Maria, perhaps we can devote the rest of the time to Main Street, Saugatuck River.
We got 5 minutes.
Yes. This was a project that actually came out of a collaboration with URI. The Economic Development Commission did this project with the idea of sustainability, economic development. It was something that several folks on the planning board were aware of and attended the community discussion that was had at the on Main Street probably 3 years ago. The idea is to enhance Main Street, make the park more usable, more user-friendly, connect to the bike path, have more awareness about the river. There was a Hera Gallery exhibit that had quite a bit of participation, everything from children in the schools to the Saugatucket nonprofit group that does regular water testing and cleanups and is very concerned with the health of the river because it is obviously related to the health of our community. And it's an important park. It's an Olmsted design park. Last year was the 200th anniversary of Olmsted, and there were celebrations around the country. So it's an opportunity, and it's something that created a lot of community interest. And as folks who were at the parade will remember, wasn't it great to see all those people at the park enjoying themselves? And we should have more integrative events like that that use the park. And of course, now there's an opportunity with the closing of the elementary school to do something there as well. And, you know, that's, I think once some of these properties go from the purview of the school department to the town council, then there can be additional conversations. We haven't been part of any of those conversations, but as far as adaptive reuse, that's, again, another opportunity. But wonderful project. So needs continuity. Obviously, grant funding is part of it. And I'd be happy to send the council the information on what Westerly has done. They've gotten DOT money, they've gotten EPA money, they've gotten SNEP grants. We did have a SNEP grant for planning as part of the Saugatucket, but there's a lot of money out there right now. You just have to have the time and energy and personnel to go after it, but totally worthwhile.
There's also the scenic stewardship plan. You got a little few minutes if you want to talk
Yes, so that is something that actually began after several years of the town application to DOT for a scenic roadway for Route 1. It was approved quite a few years ago, and the council set up a stewardship committee that did not meet due to COVID and the ability to meet in person. We had regular meetings for a couple of years and now have a consultant on board to help finalize the plan. That will be one of several plans throughout the state for scenic corridors. We obviously have the Ministerial Road, which is very different in nature to that, residential, but this will be a corridor management plan that incorporates safety, aesthetics, future uses along that road, and, you know, again, within the right-of-way, within the state right-of-way. But it's something that may also put us in a position for more grant money as well. So, and that should be completed in a very short period of time now that we have a consultant on board to help with the actual writing of all of the ideas that have been brought forward to develop a plan, which will then go to the council for their approval.
All right. Well, thank you for the planning board's time. And we're hoping we can meet again September, maybe make this a quarterly thing.
That would be great. It would be good to have a one-topic meeting,
Allows us to
too.
sort of best collaborate, be on the same page as what we're both trying to do.
So how does everyone feel about quarterly? I just want
I
to,
feel
I know
really
we
good
all
about
do, but I just
quarterly.
want to say it so that,
I like quarterly. I feel
Yes.
much happier knowing that
Us
we're going to
too.
meet again soon and sort of recap everything.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, what do we got from the executive session vote? Amy, we got something to vote from the executive session?
There should be a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session, and before that motion, the record can disclose the council made one vote in executive session, and that was under the discussion of personnel related to James Manny, town manager. The vote was, council directed the solicitor to draft an amendment to the manager's contract effective July 1st, 2023, 2.25% cost of living increase to match that recently granted to non-union employees. In addition, an increase in the maximum vacation days allowed to be carried over from the current 10 to 30, once again to match the department directors.
so moved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. All right, we're going to take about a 15-second recess before we start the meeting.
Yeah. We didn't even mark it. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a different one.
wait, you're on. We got you a public hearing. You're coming on, right?
Jamie, thank you for coming.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
How'd he play? Oh. What? 10 over. Can he drive the ball well? My son drives at 3.
No, I didn't.
Ready?
I had some very brief, I mean,
where's the
basically the process is they can initiate a
Susan.
process.
Where's the gavel?
Ah. People, my friends.
Let's get this going.
Just saying, if someone
All right, everyone, good evening. Welcome to Town Hall. We're going to get things going here. It's a little after 7:30. Today is Monday, July 10, and we're here for our regularly scheduled Town Council meeting. First order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. All right, next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. All right, next we have the roll call. If you would, Susan.
Councilwoman Bergener,
Here.
Councilwoman Alley,
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
Councilman Marin,
Here.
Councilman McEntee.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. All right, that's going to move us to item 5, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve 5A, B, and C.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. It's going to
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 7, public hearing. A is a public hearing relative to the filing of an application with the Rhode Island Office of Housing and Community Development for funding considerations of municipal public services and facilities projects under the federal Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program and to obtain citizens' views on the same. The following activities are being considered for inclusion in that application. South Kingstown Public Library, Kingston Library roof replacement of $107,500. South Kingstown Senior Center parking lot redesign and reconstruction, $250,000. We have Jamie Rabbit here from the Planning Department to talk to us on this, or Brian Wagner of,
Actually, Mr. Chairman, President McEntee, Brian Wagner, who has been handling community development block grants through our department, will explain the program and the purpose of the public hearing.
thank you. Brian?
Just in case anybody is unfamiliar with the Community Development Block Grant Program, it's a federal program. The monies are dispersed to the states, and the states then pass it through to local communities. The town of South Kingstown is one of the 33 communities that can apply for these grants. The other 6 communities in the town are what are known as entitlement communities, and they deal with the federal government directly in their communities. In order to apply, you need to apply for an eligible activity, and there's a lengthy list of eligible activities specified by statute and regulation. And what you're applying for has to meet certain national objectives. Most commonly, the national objective that you're trying to meet is low and moderate income benefit to persons in your community. 2 other eligible categories, or 2 other national objectives that don't come up quite as much, are preventing and eliminating blight and urgent need. all of the things that we're considering will be in the first category of addressing low and moderate income. So the monies that come in is about $5.5 million this year. A lot of it gets paid out during the course of the year for rolling grants for a variety of different uses. Every spring, they close down the rolling grant program and they open up a competitive grant program. There's $3.5 million reserved in this year's competitive grant program, and those grants are targeted at public facilities and public services. So this year, public facilities, every town is limited to no more than 3 projects at no more than $500,000 per project. And for public services, we're limited to no more than 2 activities, and there's no specified limit on those grants other than the fact that you have to remember that a bunch of cities and towns are all competing for the same pot of money. So the manager came to the planning department asking about a couple of projects that we had in town, one for the roof at the Kingston Library, which is reaching end of service life and is actually on the schedule to be replaced, but has actively started leaking. They are doing some temporary repairs to try and keep it stable. They are asking for $107,500 to do a full roof replacement there. Also, our senior center was looking to do a renovation on their parking lot that would both double the capacity of the parking lot and make it a little easier to navigate and park. Now, the thing about these grants is once you open the door, anybody can stick up their hand and step through and say, hey, we would also like to have some grants considered. Our first public meeting to solicit public interest was last week, and we have had a couple of local nonprofits raise their hand and ask to be considered for the public services activities. The Warm Center, which operates the Welcome House Shelter in Peacedale, has approached us and is looking for $25,000 in operating expenses to help operate their kitchens. And I believe I saw Moji Friel come in. She's here if you have any questions for the Warm Shelter about what they are looking to do there. Also, as of late last week and today, the Johnny Cake Center has approached me looking for $50,000 to help stockpile its food pantries. They noted, of course, as everybody has experienced, their food costs are up 25 to 30% over where they were same time last year, and their pantry visits are up by 73%, largely because of issue number 1. So they have also asked for to be included in the town's grant. So if there are any questions from the council?
So Brian, I got a few questions for you. So the successor to the Welcome House and the Johnny Cake Center, that's not included in this request here that we're considering. That would be a subsequent one? We'd have to have a separate public hearing?
No.
No?
All 4 things are part of the same grant. So like I said, it's a competitive grant for public facilities and public services. The town has 2 public facilities grant requests, and Johnny Cake Center and Warm have asked to be counted as our 2 public services grant requests.
Okay.
So
So those requested amounts are included here or in addition to?
So those 2 are in addition to what is on your agenda tonight, because we didn't have those numbers at the time the advertisement was posted and your materials went out. So I've spoken to the clerk about this. We're going to not take action on this tonight and continue the matter over for your next meeting so that we have time to get the detailed applications for each grant in front of you for you to be able to vote on them.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So I think I heard you say no more than 3 requests, no more than 500,000 in total. So one of the 3, you are presenting 4, you have 4 opportunities, or there are 4 opportunities?
What I said was no more than 3 public facilities grants,
Okay,
and they could be no more than $500,000 each. So a total of $1.5 million for public facilities.
okay.
Okay? We are also allowed 2 public services grants.
Ah,
Okay, so 5 total applications. In this case, we have 2 public facilities and 2 public service.
thank you for clarifying, because I wrote it down incorrectly. Thank you.
So Brian, what's the deadline by which you need council authorization for this?
So the grant deadline is, it originally started out as July 13th, but there were some problems with their new electronic grant application system, so it was extended to July 27th. So we will be able to make
July 22nd?
July 27th.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so our meeting's the 24th, so it's okay if we continue, we can get it done in the next meeting. Sounds fine?
All right. So are we going to entertain the public hearing at this point, or is it recommended that we table this?
Motion to continue the public hearing until the next meeting?
Well, if there's anybody here that wants to make public comment, I think we shouldn't waste the opportunity while they're
Okay.
here and make them make a second trip.
Good point.
You can open it and then continue it for decision.
All right, at this point, we're going to open it up for public comment on this item specifically. So if you wish to speak on this, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself, and we'll limit you to 5 minutes.
My name is Moji Frail.
Hi, Moji.
I'm the Asset Development Manager at the Warm Center, located in Westerly. And I want to thank you for something in the past, which was providing and efforting the CDBG money to acquire the Welcome House. Thank you for that. Tonight, we're here, as Brian mentioned, we're looking at an ask of $25,000 for our community meal site for it to be reopened. As you know, there is a need, a great need, as well as for the shelter guests, but this ask is for our non-shelter guests. It is to reopen it to the public. The funding would go toward the operations. It would also help us just to jumpstart this program, again, for the non-shelter guests, and as we've seen more than ever that the food costs have increased incredibly. We would really appreciate your consideration of this $25,000 to reopen that community site. And as you know, this kind of funding would help us to stretch those people's budgets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
So I just do you have the facilities to do the amount of cooking that you think you need?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
And
We've had the community site open before. This would be a reopening, and it'd be a need that we need desperately in this area.
I agree.
Can I just ask about, I know that Peacedale Congregational Church does a lot with Wally. Is that separate, or do you guys work together at all with them, or?
I wish I could answer that directly. I don't work directly at Welcome House. I do know that we do have donations from various churches come in. That's not the same as getting this up and running for a meal site that would do lunch and dinner 7 days a week.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
We've already provided there last year, I think, over some 14,000 meals. That would just be for the shelter guests. We're anticipating by opening it up, we would do another 7,500. This would help us get going.
Great.
Moji, I worked at the Warm Center all last year, the year before. So how many people, how many residents are at the Welcome House, just for people who have no idea how large it is?
Yeah, it has not changed since our application from a year ago when we did purchase the Welcome House. Is 17 beds.
They do incredible work.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this item? Everybody just come on up. All right, seeing none.
Just a couple of questions for Brian. On the two projects, the public library roof and the senior center parking redesign, are those hard figures? Is that like the total cost of doing the work?
So this has been on sort of an accelerated pace. I asked them to give me rough numbers, best estimates. By the time we get to the July 24th, I will have full application packages on each one of these grants for you to review. Okay. One thing I also need to mention that I should point out is there is a requirement as part of this application that the council rank these grants in terms of preference. So you will have to rank them 1 through 4, depending on what you believe is community need.
Mr. Maron, the cost estimates were prepared by Public Service and the town engineer, as well as Public Facilities. So they weren't just grabbed out of thin air. There was some math and cost estimating associated with them. But Brian is absolutely factually correct that those numbers will be refined for the application process and for your next meeting.
Part of what I was wondering was whether it has to come back to the council for a particular contract with a vendor for either of the projects.
So this is for approval of the grant application. In order to live up to the terms of CDBG, these projects are going to have to go out to bid on the back end anyway, in order to draw down properly on the funds.
Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion to continue this public hearing to the next meeting?
Motion to continue the public hearing until July 24th.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion is, or this item is continued to the subsequent meeting. Thank you, Brian. All right, it's going to bring us to item 8 here, public comments, or formerly known as comments from interested citizens. At this point, I invite you to come up and speak on any issue you wish to speak. We just ask that you introduce yourself, and we're going to limit you to 5 minutes.
Hi, David Flanders, Conservation Commission, also a board member of the Friends of the Saugatucket. The town is making a great, significant commitment to revitalizing, our various villages and all, and a number of wonderful new businesses have moved in over the last year on Main Street. It's a very active place. River Fire is very active, going on every Thursday. The Friends of the Saugatucket have donated a kayak launch on the main dock, as well as a very beautiful, large trash receptacle to catch overflow from all the activity down there. So there is a regular push to get more people downtown, which is great. But there is a major fly in the ointment, and that is parking, and specifically with the municipal parking lot that's right on the river. Currently, the car dealership is using a good third of that parking space, and it's keeping other people, municipal taxpayers, out of that parking lot. Additionally, it's forcing both the dealership and citizens to park on the side of the parking lot, parallel to the sidewalk and the river, and that is actually a major, major problem and a real problem waiting to happen. Because as it stands now, with those cars and utility vehicles parked there, there is no room at all for a fire engine to come in should there be, some kind of horrible accident. And that is going to be a catastrophe of historical proportions. I mean, imagine all those cars, gas tanks full, and there's a fire in that parking lot, and the fire engine can't get in there. I mean, it's not just a detriment to business expansion and people coming in and enjoying the downtown, enjoying the river, but this is a real hazard. It's a real catastrophe. And somehow this has to be regulated, has to be curbed. Maybe the dealership has outgrown its facilities. Maybe it just can't have that many vehicles without encroaching on the municipal lot.
I had, someone had asked me about this earlier. I actually asked Jim about it, if there was an arrangement with Paul Massey, and I was trying to find the email, but I can't find it really quickly.
I walk that Main Street every day, and just to see what I can see. And I wouldn't say it's 1/3. I haven't seen it like that. I would have done something right then and there if I saw. But the dealership does use that as like a lot to stage their vehicles before people pick them up. In the winter, we can get away with that. In the summer, we can't, obviously. And, you know, they're good neighbors, so we try and work with them. But I did have the building inspector go out, and he concurred that, you know, there was some overlap here. We're in the summer now, we need all those spots. So I'll send the inspector out tomorrow, and we'll get to the bottom of it. But if we do see any type of danger to the public, obviously, we would act on it immediately.
I mean, trying to think creatively, could some of the staff at Paul Massey maybe park at Wakefield School because it's summertime, and then that would keep the vehicles maybe under the cameras I'm assuming they have, and have the staff just walk that little bit, just so that they flex some of the parking?
Yeah, I'll look at different alternatives, and I'll
Yeah.
get back to you. I'm not sure if the staff is the issue. I think it's the volume of vehicles that they
Well,
fix.
right, but if there's 5 or 6 other, you take 5 cars out, there's 5 more spots.
Yeah,
I don't know where the staff park.
Yeah, you know, now that you say that, I know a lot of the staff parks on the road.
Oh,
So we'll get to the bottom of it.
okay.
I'd also like to see what the Union Fire District, you know, Marshall would have to say about that, too. I mean, we see them at TRC, and Tom, you know, takes a regular look at the plans. It's wide enough. We do have enough radius. We do not. Obviously, you know, they would know better than certainly I, but it seems to be, you know, a problem we need to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right, come on up.
I'm Bill McCusker, 2625D Commodore Perry Highway, and I'm here to talk about the same issue that David is. I was here at the same thing, and at River Fire, in fact, I noticed that people from River Fire parked in Massey's parking lot, and they had staff telling them that it was private. And in the lot was Massey's service vehicle and a lot of other municipal vehicles there for repair from around the state. We do have 1-hour parking, and if they do have their staff park on the street, they're in violation with the 1-hour parking. But that 1-hour parking is taking the employees and forcing them in these municipal lots that are consumed by the Massey dealership. And you know, I've worked for the town for a long time. I agree with David. It's 1/3, if not more, of Massey's consuming that area. So something's got to be happening. I know down in Marina Park, they have no overnight parking. Maybe that's something we can at least start with to eliminate cars from spending the night there. There's a lot of them there for repair, and it's tough to have vehicles that are needing repair for lots of things 24 hours sitting there next to our river leaching in. So would hope that not only do you talk to Massey, try to control it, but look around the town as other areas to eliminate overnight parking and then enforce it. And that's my comment. Any questions?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the audience? Just come on up. First come, first serve. Bob, come on.
Bob Traeger, Succotash Road. I'm going to embarrass myself again, like I normally do. Do we have a local newspaper anymore in town?
We do.
What is it?
Well, we have the South County.
I haven't seen them any. If I go for breakfast, I usually pick one up, you know. And there's never a stack of them anymore. I wondered if we were like the rest of the country where our local papers are dying
We do
like
have them.
flies.
I usually get it at Healy's.
They're still there. They're both there. The two papers are still around, huh? Is there a reporter here tonight from one of the papers?
There isn't, but I actually believe that they're going to start covering the school committee meetings. Bob?
A lot of people here today. So
Bob-
I don't know why they're here, but I'm glad they're here. You know that how I feel about
Oh,
that.
they tune in on the internet. They
I'm
watch.
glad they're here. So anyway, I've been I was in New Hampshire this past week, so I think I missed the last meeting, but that's okay. It's just, I wanted to ask that other question. I embarrassed myself once, now I'll do it again. What is going on? Why is the Johnny Cake Center, why did they have to close? Is that a private?
Merry Christmas.
Okay, thanks. Okay, the Independent, right, I'm gonna, I listened to quite a bit about these papers around the country, and it's very true that if they disappear, that's a very bad thing for a lot of people. Because, anyway, I was going to ask about the Johnny Cake Center. Does anybody have just a quick, why did they have to close? I thought it was a wonderful thing.
So Kate Brewster was here, and they're no longer doing the clothing and furniture, and they're turning that into a youth center, because I believe they think that that's the need of, they want to serve that need. So is that what you're asking, why there isn't a clothing place?
Well, is there any replacement for that type of a facility right now? Is there a place where you can bring good clothes and leave? I know there are some, I mean, there are these places you can dump them
So
in.
at the
I don't mean that, I mean a local,
Yes,
a
Bob.
local facility.
At the end of High Street, there's the Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's right next to like the Pear Cleaners, the new Maze. It's right there, right near the Saugatucket Park.
Oh, if it had disappeared completely, I would consider that a major loss for the community. I'm going to sit down, but by God, this world now, I mean, I spend a lot of time, looking at it, and I've said many times, we live in a cocoon over here. We're living in a little world, little make-believe world. It's not, you don't have to go too far for that. Go down to California. Did you see the thing on the homeless situation in California? How about that? This is the United States of America. People don't have enough food, they have no place to live, and it's not getting better.
Thank you, Bob. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak on any item? Invite to come up.
There's a lot of
A
people.
lot of people here.
I know.
So
This
I
is your
encourage
only,
you, come on up.
this is the only
Now's a good
time.
opportunity. Come on up.
My name is Mary Gail Smith, and I wanted to talk about the private road situation. Is this the appropriate time? Great. I live at 17 Periwinkle Drive West in South Kingstown, and mine is a private dirt road, and I knew it was a private road when I bought the property. I'm also one of the roads that was grandfathered as far as snow plowing. So I have enjoyed that service since 2011, and I wave at the town employee when he goes by. I'm very glad to see him. I'd love to see that service continued, but what I'm really concerned about is the liability issue that might be associated with owning a road. There's nothing in my deed that indicates that I own the road, and I contacted the title company that I used in 2011, and I'm working my way through 65 pages of abstract right now, and I'm pretty sure that nothing's going to say that I own the road. So I think what I'd like to respectfully say is that I'd like to turn it around a little bit and have the town demonstrate to me that I own the road, and then I can, look at liability and things of that sort. I think that's important. I was very concerned when I read the postcard that came announcing the termination of the town services to the private roads because of the word require that was used, and I just didn't feel that it was appropriate for the town to require me to do something for a parcel that I don't believe I own. And then on the subject of money, I'm not sure how much it costs the town every year to plow this portion of the 70 miles of private road in our town, but I'm sure you have the figure. And I'd like to suggest that if you do go forward with the idea of not plowing any of the private roads, that money be deducted from the town budget. And I'm fearful of a loss of personnel if that should happen. But in any event, I do appreciate the fact that you will be considering the private road situation on a case-by-case basis, and I think that that's really an appropriate and fair way to do it. And I thank you.
Thank you. You got something?
Deb, did you want to tell me something?
Yeah, so I don't know if you followed all the way back to when we took this up, and I feel like this was in the.
Yes, I got all of my information from the newspaper and then one town council meeting.
So we talked about it, and that there are a number, it came to us because there are people who live on private roads who are paying for plowing.
Yep.
And so they are paying thousands of dollars to get their roads plowed, and they said, why are all these other roads not paying and we're paying? So they asked, so we really have a couple of choices. Everybody could get plowing and grading, which probably everyone would like, until we have to then increase our budget to sort of do all of that, right? That's one potential option. We could do nothing and continue on and have a have and have not, which wouldn't feel good to the people who are paying and other people are not. Or we could do what I think we said we would do, is we would continue it for the winter and then discontinue it going forward to be equitable to all the places where there are private roads. So I know you probably know this, but I'm just explaining it one more time because I don't necessarily think the paper gets all of the information right. So there's a lot of private roads that people live on, people here on the council and the town staff that pay for a plow. Well,
Oh, absolutely. I understand completely. And the snow plowing is a really small concern of mine. I'm concerned about being told that I'm the owner of the road. I don't think I am, and I would like to have that demonstrated to me because I don't believe that I am. That's my request at this time.
Okay.
So you may not be the owner of the road. Somebody else may own the road. So the thing you would have to find out is who owns the road. I don't think we're saying that you own the road, but someone owns the road. It's not the town that owns it.
Well, the
That's what we
postcard
would have
said
to
that
figure
I
out.
was required to maintain the road. And I just want to, it's like, I don't believe I own it. I know someone does own it, and it would be really helpful to find out who that might be, but I just don't think it is I. So that's my concern. And thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Yep.
we recognize you. Come on up.
So,
Just introduce yourself.
my name is Norma Rolking. I didn't want to talk about that, but may I say something about that? I have lived on several private roads in my young life, and we've had to pay to have them plowed. It does not cost thousands of dollars to plow a road unless you are the only one on a 5-mile road. And what people often have is an association on which they own the road, and they are legally responsible because in their deed it says they own the road, and they have to therefore pay to maintain it. Our roads are not like that. And what I wanted to talk about was our roads, these roads that are not paved, of which 40 of the 75 are not paved. They are sand and gravel or whatever gradient they put on the road. That's 40 of 80. And those are the ones I really want to talk about. They are mostly the roads that are around ponds and oceans. It's like Ocean Green Hill Beach Road, that road. They have a lot of traffic on them, but it's people traffic. It's not business traffic. So there are no food trucks going through from one place to another. There are people going to the pond or going to the ocean or going to visit people, and they're not paved, and they were never meant to be paved. You wouldn't want them paved because as they are now, they're porous. When it rains the way it did now, Our roads have water all over them. They have potholes all over them. That's how they will stay unless the local people will get together and fill in the potholes. You guys have nothing to do with that. The only thing that you guys do is, at the end of the winter, you'll come in and grade at level once. After that, we're on our own. When you do plow, it's at the end of a snowstorm. You don't pre-salt, you don't pre-sand, you don't salt or sand afterward. All you do is plow. You lift your plow up when you come through, and you plow, I don't know what it is around here in Connecticut, it's 3 inches. You don't go down to the grade of the road. And you don't want to, because doing that, if you see what happens to town roads at the end of a bad winter, they often have to regrade, not regrade, they have to re-asphalt or fill in the potholes after a bad winter. So I was looking up roads. We are not on a private road. A private road is a road that is for the owners of the road and their guests, and any emergency or garbage or stuff like that that is for them. They have easements to use the road to get to their property. That's not what we have. And our roads were developed in 1948. And they were developed by 2 brothers, Norman and Roland Beauregard. So in 1948, which is, I looked up my deed and a couple of my neighbors, my deed says as of Norman and blah, blah, blah. So I went to look up Norman and Ronald Beauregard. They had, and they gave me a map of parcel plots on all these little roads that were part of the Pawtucket by the Sea Association. And it allowed, it showed that they could sell these roads, these parcels, and that the people who bought the parcel would have rights to 2 plots of land owned by the Pawtucket by the Sea Beach Association for recreational use. On our roads, DEM has a lot of activity. They own a property across from...
It is the 5-minute time limit. I just want to ask you to sort of conclude. I'll give you a little bit of time. We want to give everyone a sort of equitable share time of the 5 minutes.
Okay. All I just wanted to say is they're very public roads. They have 100 or 200 people that use it all the time. And DEM owns properties on both of them, and they use them. They tag the geese, or they give lectures about pond things and stuff like that.
All right, thank you. I have to afford others in the room the same amount of time,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? No.
Susan Dye Sigmund, 105 Sandpiper. I want to speak to somewhat of the same issue, but add a couple thoughts. The concept of having a private road never occurred to me when I purchased my plot on Sandpiper. It has mailboxes at the site of each house. There's a town water, we get town water, and there's a hydrant there. So when I asked the person, the agent who was showing me the place, who's in charge of maintaining the road, they said South Kingstown. So I had no reason to believe that there was any chance of that being rescinded or changed, because it had been that way for approximately 60 years. The concept that came up earlier with somebody who lived in a homeowners association and took umbrage of the fact that they were plowing, other homeowners. Homeowners associations sometimes are designed for their privacy, and they make within their own plans that they are going to maintain their own roads. In the case of our road, that was not the case, and in the case of a lot of the dirt roads in that area, also the same. One of the things that was stated was that people on roads, private roads, have the option of applying to be town roads. As it stands, we can't do that because of the narrowness of the road. Also, I think it would be inadvisable to do that because you do not want to put asphalt on a sensitive area such as Sandpiper or Teal or a lot of the other areas where already you're trying to reduce the amount of runoff by what we have, which would be permeable driveways as well as rain gardens. I mean, that's a big issue in building. That was part of what we did when we built our house in following the FEMA, CRMC, and South Kingstown regulations. So I would encourage you to consider your decisions on the basis of each road and on the basis of history. I know that there was a comment at one point that there was no paper that you could find that there was an agreement to do this. On the other hand, there was some agreement at some point because it did continue for at least 6 decades. So I think some credence has to be given to that. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elise Torello. I live at 2625D Commodore Perry Highway. And despite my address, I don't really live on Route 1. I live on a private road. I knew it was private when I moved into it. There's about 5 houses on it. And we pay to plow it. And when we have to have it repaired, we pay to repair it. And that's just the way it is. We all chip in and we do it because it's a private road. I and my husband do own part of it. Some of it, we don't know who owns it. I went on the town GIS today and it's no man's land. On the tax map, there's a line at the top of it and a line at the bottom of it, and it's white, and when you click on it, it says no parcel found. We maintain it and plow it anyway because we like to be able to get out and we like to be able to use it. And that's just the way it is. And I think if you're going to talk about maintaining private roads, the only fair way to do it is to do everybody's and to do nobody's. And to do everybody's is simply infeasible. And I understand that and I accept that, and that's part of living on a private road. We don't have an association. We're just good neighbors, and we pay our fair share and we take care of it. So I think picking and choosing is a really bad idea, and it's just not fair to those of us who live on private roads who don't have that, that option of having the town come in and do it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience? Just come on up.
Robert Jensen, Sandpiper Drive. I wasn't going to come up to speak because I did speak at the last meeting, but after those comments, I have to get up. I mean, she acknowledged that she's on a private road. They like the fact they're on a private road. A lot of these other streets, that's not the case. We don't have private road on the street. People come walking their dogs. DEM comes in. They're constantly doing different surveys they're doing. And I think the council looking at each road individually is the way to go, because there's probably the majority of people, if they have a house on a road that says private, they want to keep it that way, and they don't want the public on it. We're not that situation. We want the public to come in. The public are coming in now, and I appreciate the council thinking about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Does DEM own a piece of property?
Yes, I believe they own 2 pieces, and they do quite a bit of research. Also, the Army Corps of Engineers has done research in that area because of those ponds and the pollution issues. And like the 2 people before me who came up and spoke, the residents in that area try to do their best to keep their properties, not fertilizing their lawns, to keep things as nice and natural as possible. And that's...
So my question was really, it's not that you allow the public to come through. They own a piece of property and they're accessing the pond and doing research. So it's not the same as the town, like Parks and Rec, just driving down your road. They actually own a piece of property and
Well, their piece of property is in the beginning of the street.
and they go to the
And
end.
they come all the way down because they're checking on the swans that are on the pond, the geese, and different waterfowl that are in the area.
How do they access the pond?
I guess they even walk through some people's properties if they have to get to do a certain thing.
Interesting. Is there a right-of-way there? There is? There, okay.
But it,
There is a right-of-way in that area, and what this would open up to is that if that, this becomes, if it's not a private road, people are going to park there to use that access to that right-of-way. So I just want to make that clear that as soon as this goes out, that this is their public roads, you're going to have a ton of traffic coming in there, kayakers, surfers. It's going to get busy.
we have that now. You have a number of kayakers who come in and
Where do they park?
they can park right on the street. There is enough.
With?
There is enough width. And we recently widening the landscape and everything because it was being neglected. So there is enough room to get through there. And if the town came through there, they would see that there is off-street parking in some of the areas, not all of the area.
Sandpiper? Are you Sandpiper or Sandsprite?
Sandpiper.
Okay.
There's another road that's also included, and this is Community Drive up there, and that's another one. If you go to the end of Community Drive, there's actually a public right-of-way to get in for people who want to bring kayaks or anything. So that's another property that people use to come in. We see them coming down constantly because we have a rental property, and we see them coming down, and they're enjoying it. They just love South Kingstown. These people are coming into South Kingstown, love to come here, and the people who live on these roads and everything, we enjoy seeing them because they're all nice people, and it just works out great. Okay. And I think by doing that, we're going to be turning off a lot of people who come in just to come to South Kingstown to see these nice rural areas.
Thank you.
Hi, Pat Barber. I live on the road next to Sandpiper, or off the road, Shadberry, and it's bordered by two wetlands. It's a narrow road. I believe DEM would have a fit if we ever tried to pave it. And I really do not understand this. The precedent has been 62 years of you grading and plowing the road, and all of a sudden, it's going to change. I was here the last meeting. It's not a private road. It's an unowned, abandoned road, and it's been that way. So I just don't get it. And if it's a private road, how did you get permission to run your water pipes and your fire hydrant down this road? I don't understand it. And like Mary Gale had said, I think you should prove it to us that it's private, because we've never believed it was private.
So there's a lot of legal questions you raise. And
Right.
We have an item for a lot of those questions, and our town solicitor is going to address a lot of those. We haven't gotten to that yet, but that will be in like 2 items following this.
I thought it was going to be today because
It
I
is
saw
tonight.
private.
It is. It's just
It's going to
we
be
haven't
later on
gotten to it yet.
today?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be under the town solicitor's report. It's number
So a lot of
11.
those questions you raised, we're just going to wait a little bit. And we're hoping she can address it for us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Could I ask a question? So for anyone who lives on a private road, if a large tree falls and crosses your road, especially where you don't have associations, how is that handled? Because I know of a road where there's a tree that's fallen down and it's a private road and people have left it there. It's still there to this day.
I think I spoke to that last time. When I moved in, a tree fell across my road. It was the summer, and nobody happened to be there. I called the town, and the man at Public Works said, he looked up the road, and he said, you're on your own. And we do grading and plowing. So myself and one of my neighbors cut the tree up and moved it, or we hire a private contractor.
Right.
The town does nothing else, just those two things. And in my case, they've been doing it for 23 years.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had that happen last storm. One came down on my road, and
You were responsible?
we were responsible for it.
Right, and I mean, I know someone who's left the tree there.
Hi, Vincent Crishone. I'm from Broad Hill Way. I just want to remind everyone why we brought this issue up in the first place. We noticed we live on a private road, and behind us is another private road, Sand Plains Trail. So our road connects to Sand Plains Trail, and we had noticed that the plow, the South Kingstown Town plow, was coming down our road with the plow up, and they'd hit Sand Plains Trail, which is another private road, and they'd drop the plow. So we asked the town, why are they plowing another private road, not our private road? And they said, well, those roads were grandfathered in. And we asked them, well, we just want you to drop the plow on the way in. And they said, we can't add any more private roads. This went back several years ago. And so that's why this got brought up. I will say, I don't own the road. I live on the private road, Broad Hill Way. I do not own any part of that road, but I still pay for the plowing. So the idea that just because you live on a private road that's not owned by yourself doesn't mean that you don't have to contribute to paying for it. We don't want to pay for the plowing. Our goal was not to get everybody else's private road kicked out of plowing. We wanted our road to be plowed. We wanted it to be fair. So I don't see how you can pick and choose which roads just because some have some pond or something that DEM's using. I mean, we're connected to land trust land. I mean, there's a golf course that's going in behind us. There's a huge development behind us. So, I mean, I would love if you guys plow our road, but I don't think it's fair to pick and choose. And I agree with what someone else said about picking and choosing. It's just not fair. We spend $10,000 a year plowing our road. It's a small road. There's like 20 people on it. So that cost adds up. It's, plowing is the main expense. My dad lives in Stone Soup. That's a brand new development. He does not own the road, but he pays for the plowing. He pays for an HOA. One other thing I'll say about HOA is we did not have an HOA, but some people weren't contributing to the plowing fees, so we formed an HOA to get the people to pay. So just because you don't have an HOA, that doesn't give you an excuse for not taking care of your road. You can form an HOA like we did. It's a pain in the neck, but we did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the audience? Feel free to just come on up.
Hi, my name is Elaine Meyer, and I live at 9 Teal Drive, and we've had our house since 1996, so that's 26 years. And I really honestly wasn't aware that I was on a private road because we saw fire hydrants and mailboxes, so we have services there. And honestly, it was only during COVID that we lived there through the winter. And we were very grateful that we had one time after every storm there would be plowing. And I have to tell you what worries me very much is safety issues. We have children on our street, and I'm very, very worried about citizens that may not, hearing, this is very inspirational that people get together, they pay for this, but I am very worried about whether this is feasible. And I keep hearing it's very, very expensive, but I would really be in favor of a cost analysis for this. What would it cost to maintain our roads so that we all feel that it's fair, that it's equitable, and that someone is in charge of it? I am very nervous about the haves and the have-nots. Who's going to take charge of this? What happens if a tree falls on it? Can you get out to work? But the thing that keeps me up at night is kids on their bicycles, kids that are, going down with, oars and stuff on their shoulders to go down to use a kayak or a canoe. That really takes it to a different level. It's about money, but it's also about the safety and the well-being of our citizens, of our children. And my son is 26 years old, so he's not a little one. But there are many of us that care about everyone in our community. And so rather than say it's too much money, I think that we need to really look at this and do a cost analysis and really deliberate about this as a community. What is fair? What can we afford? And how can we take whatever money is available and get the most mileage out of that so that everybody feels that they are cared for? What happens if there's an elderly person that may be on a fixed income and they may not be able to contribute? What is going to happen under those circumstances? Those are the people that I am worried about. I have a neighbor like that. I guess we would be picking up his share. I'm not sure whether we can afford that. I'm not sure if any other people can. So I just feel that this has really opened up really, it's a dilemma for all of us. But I think none of us is as smart or as creative as all of us, and I would really encourage us to get some facts. We need our engineers involved with this. DEM sounds like they have a role to play. And I really, I would be happy to contribute to this effort to make sure that, for the safety and well-being of all of our community, especially those that are disenfranchised or that are on fixed incomes that may not be able to contribute to this. So thank you for considering these larger, more ethical issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Kunkel. I live at 28 Arrowwood Drive. We've owned that house for the past 35 years, and for 35 years, the town has plowed the road. They've graded the road, and I believe a precedent has been set for 35 years. No one from the town has ever come to us and said, you live on a private road, it's your responsibility to plow, maintain this road, even though we do all the other things that are needed to that road other than the plowing and the grading. That's all the town does. But here's my question. I'm curious if somebody had an emergency on one of these roads and your ambulance, the town ambulance, or your fire truck needed to get down that road, and for whatever reason, it hadn't been plowed, or it had potholes in it that were so deep that the vehicle couldn't get down, I wonder whose liability that might be. Again, nobody has come to us and said or shown us that this is a private road and you, 8 or 10 residents on this road, own this road. It's your liability. Nobody has proved that to us. So my challenge to you is, what would happen in that situation? Whose liability would that be? I think I have an idea who would be in that, and I don't think you would want to be sitting in that seat. So I think we're all in this together. But at the end of the day, as another speaker said, the mailboxes are at the end of the road towards the pond. The fire hydrant is at the end of the road at the pond. There are water lines that run down there. If this was truly a private road, why would those things be at the end of the road? And why would the town have paid for all this for at least in my experience, the past 35 years? As the other lady mentioned, these dirt roads have been there for 75 years. It seems interesting to me that for 75 years, nobody has objected to this other than apparently one individual here recently, or maybe a multiple, that have now said, hey, listen, you know what, it's not fair. Why are their roads plowed and ours aren't? I know one thing, everybody, whether you're a town, whether you're a private individual, everybody is cost conscious today, and for good reason. It seems interesting to me that all of a sudden out of the blue, now all of a sudden this has become an issue, whereas it hasn't been in the last 75 years. So I asked the town council, what has changed? What has changed over the last, in my experience, at least 35 years? Never been an issue. All of a sudden now, it is an issue. So That's one answer I would like to know. But the other one that I'm very interested in is about the liability. So I think the town potentially opens themselves up to this liability, and I think that's something you guys should consider. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, for the public that's here, how many miles of private roads do we have, and how many were we plowing and grading versus not taking care of them, plowing and grading? Do you have that?
I do. There are 840 roads total in the town of South Kingston, 265 miles of roadway. A breakdown of that 840 roads are 463 of those roads are town-owned roads, equating to 147 miles of town-owned roads. There are 333 private roads. Approximately 70 miles is comprised, so those 333 private roads is about 70 miles of roadway. Of the 333 private roads, 80 are maintained, plowing, snow plowing, and grading. There are also 44 state roads of about 51 miles of roadway.
Thank you, Jim.
So there's 80 roads total of the 330, so about 25% of the...
20%. So it really comes down to this. So out of the 70 miles of roadway, I'll go over this number again, 333 private roads, approximately 70 miles of roadway, private. About 12 to 13 miles are the ones we're talking about. So we maintain about 12 to 13 miles of the total of 70 miles of private roadways. So it's about 20% less, maybe a little less.
Right, and of all the roads in South Kingstown that we own, all the miles, so 70 and 147 and 150, and those are all the roads that encompass South Kingstown? We have 370 miles of roads in town, if you include the state roads.
I'll go over those real quick again, because I went over them quick. 840 roads total in South Kingstown. Total roads in South Kingstown.
You said, you wrote down 100, you said 147 public roads. You said
147 miles of town roads.
Town roads, 149 miles of state roads, so that's 300. No?
No, that's why, let me go over those numbers just so
Okay,
everyone.
go ahead.
So there's 840 roads total in South Kingstown.
Yep.
That is 265 miles. Next category, 463 town-owned roads, which equates to 147 miles.
Okay.
Next category, 333 private roads, which equates to 70 miles. And 44 state roads, which equates to 51 miles. So of the private roads, there's 333 private roads, 70 miles, 80 are maintained by the town of plowing and grading. And of that 70 miles that I talked about 12 or 13 miles equates to those 80 roads. Okay. So total number of private roads, 333, total miles, 70. 80 are maintained by the town, and about 13 miles of that are those 80 roads.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just ask a question about that? How many of those private roads have wetlands on either side so that we can't do any kind of, like, we can't pave? You know what I mean? I would be for making my road a public road, but I can't. I live on Shadberry, by the way, and I'm Doreen Grandel, sorry. So that's a question, like, where our hands are tied. And the other thing is, I kind of understand what you're all saying, but I did start calling a number of companies, right, to see what companies would come and plow our roads. I got 0. I called like 7 places. No one is willing to do it, partly because of the way the roads are. They're sand, they're gravel, they don't want to deal with it. They're saying no. So now we're effectively tied. Our hands are tied. I can't find a company to come and do it. I can't pave and make it a public road, what are we supposed to do? I mean, I honestly don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Feel free to just come on up. We're limited to one tonight. Anyone who hasn't spoken, does anyone wish to come up? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on. Last call.
Oh, there's a person.
All right, come on up.
Nope, not you, Norman.
Wait. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Sharon Yeagle, and I live with Tom Kunkel, who just spoke recently. I just had a question for you, and I hope that someone could answer for us. What was the criteria on which you decided at some point in the very distant past which private roads you would take on and do maintenance of? Because it seems to me if the rationale had to do with the difficulty of certain roads in complying with the town road standards, such as Shadberry Trail, where you've got the wetlands on either side, you cannot do paving. If perhaps the town said at some point, we will take on this because it benefits our town for us to be able to make this safe passage, but there are limitations and it will never meet the standards of a town road, then that seems to me it would be a very good reason to continue that policy. So when you talk about making decisions at this point on a case-by-case basis, obviously I think it would be very important to everyone to know how you would make those decisions. But to start with how you made the decisions way back 50, 60 years ago. So I'm curious to see if we could get that question answered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that information exists.
Yeah.
Jim, are you aware of any information?
I can answer some of this, but, so in full disclosure, I live on a private road. And
do you?
I've lived there 25 years, I've maintained it, I've paid for the plowing and so forth. Years before I became the town manager, I did inquire, could this be a town road? Because obviously, if I could get the town to maintain it and plow it, it'd be great. And most of these 333 roads that I talked about as private roads, out of the total number of 840, cannot meet the standards of a town-owned road. They don't have the drainage, the width, like my road in particular did not have the base that it should have had to be a town-owned road. So when I inquired, I was told that the owner of these properties on these roads would have to improve them to the point to include curbs, paving, fixing the road so it's acceptable to the town to take this road over. It was very cost prohibitive. It was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to my particular road to change it, so we chose not to. And to answer the other question, the town council, this was brought to the town council's attention by a homeowners association that was talking about equity in the maintenance of the roadways.
But there's no information in existence as to what the criteria was used 65 years ago as to why certain roads were included.
There's not, and the Director of Public Services is here. He tried to find out how did this happen, and we talked to some of the oldest employees who've been here for like 40 years, and also the Public Services Director that was here nearly 40 years before that. There's no evidence of anything other than maybe a handshake or verbal, it was a much different town, 60, 70 years ago.
Not to be flippant, but it's like probably a Rhode Island thing, and they knew a guy, or there was somebody, something, who 50 or 100 years ago worked it out. And said, can you
One statistic, though, is that no private roads have been added to be maintained by the town of South Kingstown, at least for the past 35 years.
Right. Yeah. So, are we done?
Thank you, Jim. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? If so, I ask you to come up now because we're going to move on if not. Last call. Anyone hasn't spoken yet? All right, we're going to move on. All right, that's going to bring us to new business. Rich Bourbonnais, we got 2 items for you, so if you want to come on up. We'll take those in chunks here, item A and B. If you just want to brief us on those.
Aeration is first, I believe, is that correct? Is that A?
Yep.
Clarkson?
Yep.
So just generally, these are aeration panels that we'd like to purchase. We go ahead and install them ourselves. It's at the wastewater treatment plant. Our wastewater techs are able to make those installations, so we just need to purchase those panels. It's as simple as that.
Okay. On-street maintenance, on-call maintenance of street fixtures.
All right, then we got you for item B here as well.
And I'll go on, streetlight maintenance. This is, I was in here a little while back, and it was for what's called an Itron transmitter. So that's a different part of the maintenance aspect here. This is actually for the light fixture itself. We need a consultant that can go out when we need to and put lights up, switch them out when we have a failure, or when National Grid replaces, Rhode Island Energy replaces a pole. They effectively and literally just tape the light to the pole, and we have to get that back put up again. So that's what this is for.
A motion to approve 9A and B.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
All right, it's going to move us to item C. Luke Murray, come on up. A resolution authorizing the submittal of the South Kingstown School Building Project Stage 2 report document prepared by Studio Jade to the Rhode Island Department of Education School Building Authority.
Good evening. Let me just pull this up really quick. All right. So I'm happy to be here tonight to advance this, hopefully advance the stage 2 in the process. I do have a brief presentation that was formulated by Studio Jade, our architect for the school building committee. Just to explain a little bit about the process, not only for your benefit, but for the public. It's brief and I will go through it, but you should have received the benefit of a personalized video from Phil that was distributed, as well as a summary report for the stage 2. So, I'll give you a quick update on the stage 2, the cost estimate and schedule and next steps. Just so everyone understands in context what an actual stage 2 is, it is a report which follows the stage 1. Stage 1 identifies the need for the district. It is required as part of a process by the Rhode Island Department of Education for reimbursement. That's called the necessity of school construction process. So it's a fairly long process, involves multiple steps, 5 in total. We're only at step 2 right now, but it's a very important step. So as part of this, this report, there's 10 different sections: project summary and prioritization, architectural feasibility study, schematic design documents, design and construction cost projections, financing plans, site purchase plan, local support, project timeline, commissioning agent and OPM services, and response to comments from the stage 1, which we already have a lot of this, so we're really looking to address already the stage 1 by establishing a stage 2. Number 1 is what you should have in front of you, which is the summary. The summary is exactly that. It outlines the project, what the cost is, basically all the core contents of what's contained in the report. So obviously very important, but is sort of the boil down of what the process is and what we're proposing. Number 2, the architectural feasibility study. So this includes structural reports, so we had to actually go out on site. Studio Jade led this effort with a subconsultant to have soil testing done to ensure the soils would be stable enough for any proposed building, make sure there's not any early issues that we should be aware of. For some reason, my computer, I'm sorry, it keeps advancing on its own. I don't know if Phil tricked me on this presentation or what. Soil investigation, radon reports, demographic report, and traffic study. So all things that you would expect as common due diligence as part of the process, that's done and included in the report for RIDE review. Schematic design documents. So as many of you know, we've already presented out some schematic designs and what our program would be. This is necessary to create a cost estimate. So it includes ed specifications, your renderings, narratives, and as I said, is the core of cost estimating. So just to remind everyone, so you and the public knows what's going into this report, what's going in the RIDE. There's a lot what we've already discussed. You can see the site here for the existing high school, and we're really focused on the high school new construction and associated athletic complex. And this is the proposed school as we'll go into the report, moving the school up to School Street, relocating the field, what I'll call a compressed concept of shrinking the building and right-sizing, approximately 154,000 square feet. So obviously you can't see everything on this drawing, but those big blue blocks represent the auditorium, and the light blue block is the gymnasium. You can see a basketball court drawn in there. Common core, which is in green, and then a lot of the purple is our classrooms, and that's a 3-story structure on the end. So that aligns along School Street as you're looking at it, would be at the bottom. Again, second story, you can see the auditorium because obviously that's a 2-story structure. Second floor track on the gymnasium, additional classroom cores, media center, offices, etc. And then the third floor would be primarily academic cores, which is shown to your left. So on the CCMS site, we've been, as many of you know, we've been talking about the athletic facility, which is exciting, our reuse of this particular site. So the plan would be to demolish the existing middle school, which is as we know, all the students are now relocating to Broad Rock, and we'd construct a new facility, which we're hoping will be reimbursable from RIDE. And again, how far we get is going to be dependent on what the final budget and what the cost restrictions will be. You know, we know that we're going to have to value engineer some of the project, but the goal is to level the site, get a track and field, high quality track and field. The field house, as shown here in the bottom right-hand corner, is not included as part of the project. It's clearly stated in the stage 2. Those are not reimbursable through RIDE. We've said that over and over again. But we're hopeful that through private funding and other mechanisms, we'll be able to afford that for future. And there's another view of that particular site. So we did have cost estimates done. Phil and his team hired a group called PMNC, well-known estimation team. That's what they do. They did look at our project and ran it through the ringer to see in the current environment what the cost of that project would be. The good news is we're in the ballpark. As Phil would say, we're within striking distance at this point, which for stage 2 going in, that's our goal. We know we're going to have value engineering to do. We know there's some cost containment to do. Chris Spiegel, who's with Left Field, is sitting in the audience. I can certainly introduce you to him, but he'll be working with our team to help with the cost containment as we move forward. So this is the estimate as it's going to go into RIDE. Keep in mind that this is formula driven, and by that I mean that RIDE has certain particular thresholds that they'll reimburse on. It's not always, as we've said in the past, based on the reality of the current construction environment. So as we've talked before, RIDE's number for high schools is upwards of $600 a square foot. Real prices in the current environment is upwards of $850 a square foot. So thanks to the council and the earlier discussion we've had, we're planning for the future and knowing that that school is likely to be built at that $850 number, but we're reimbursed on a formula based, which is here. So the high school and the stadium, we're estimating at $111 million, which is the reimbursable rate. Renovations to the Hazard building, which we've included for future, in addition to Broad Rock, Peacedale, Matunic, and West Kingston elementary schools. Those are all projects we're including, as we've said before, but for the public benefit. The price in here exceeds what we'll be looking to bond. Right? So the project, as the building committee is looking at it and the way the town is looking at it, is the high school and high-quality athletic complex. That's our goal. But for future, for what RIDE will approve for potential reimbursement will be higher. We hope it will be higher. And the purpose of that is if we do get funding, additional funding within the next 5 years, we'll be eligible for those reimbursements. So, as I said, we're within striking distance. The estimates from PM&C were ranging between $127 million to $136 million. It's still a lot of money, right? But when you're talking in terms of a $125 million project, that is within a reasonable realm of doability from a sense of being able to cost contain a project. And I will not go through this. This is something that was included in your matrix. You can see the different components of the building complex and the cost in each of those. And essentially, this shows us where our major cost containment has to be. So for instance, metals up top of the superstructure is going to be a lot more impactful if we can compress the structure than is, let's say, wood and plastics or composites, right? Going to laminate on a countertop is not going to make a big dent in our budget on $125 million. So that the top tier items are the things that the school building committee will be working with our OPM, architectural team on cost containment strategies. The financing plan, it's pretty simple. We're going to bond for $125 million. We'll be circling back on this soon, but essentially we'll be asking for voter approval. If we don't get voter approval, quite frankly, we don't have a project. We will not be moving forward. Number 6 is a site purchase plan. We have none because we have no site to purchase. We own this current site. Chapter 8, which is the project schedule, we have detailed milestones, and you may have seen those in the report. We're estimating by 2007 to have construction substantially complete. It is outlined in there. It's a good guide at this point, but not complete. Section 9, commissioning agent and OPM. As I said, we've recently procured the services of Left Field, so they're on board for what I'm calling a phase 1 of services. We'll have a phase 2, which includes construction and the advanced design and estimating. And a commissioning agent is something that we'll discuss later is required by RIDE. And then response to comments from stage 1, we already have those. We'll be including those. And then we do expect comments on stage 2. It's just a normal part of the progress. So just for a timetable, it's just for everyone's clear, this isn't actually due until September 15th. We're ahead of schedule. That's a good thing. But we've said over and over again, we want to have it at a time that RIDE has time in between review approvals to kind of sit down for SK specifically and review this. We're hoping for an advanced timeline and a response from them as a result. So we're hopeful they can do that. I have talked to them. But this submission, should you approve tonight, we're expecting with some minor modifications to be submitted no later than July 17th. And then we'll have a motion which is included in your packet, not this specific. This was a Phil drafted one, so I'll digress. Do we have any questions tonight?
Any questions?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So from the RIDE standpoint, they have a set number based on the square footage and the population, right? So our number was approximately 154,000 square feet based on a student population of 725. You run the numbers from RIDE side, it's very formulaic, whatever. They come out of the other end and they say, all right, you're eligible for $100 million of reimbursable monies. That's what we can do because we're formula-based. The field, which was higher than originally estimated, we had said earlier we were looking at about $6 million. It turned out after the estimating, it's more like 11. So we're including that number. So the $100 million plus the $11 million is the $111 million number that you're seeing. That's sort of a RIDE-based formula-driven decision on their part. Mm-hmm. We know from the estimate that the high school with athletic field is going to cost upwards of that 127 to 136 at this point, without any additional adjustments, and we're still going to be tweaking substantially. Plus, the market may change. You know, we are seeing some cracks that is starting to turn a little bit. That's my hope. So, to your point, you're absolutely right. We'll get hopefully the approval for that formula base, but we know that we're going to have to cover what we've talked about as the gap, which the town will have to fully fund. But that'll be coming from the bond proceeds should the voters approve. Mm-hmm. But our goal is we don't have any more than 125. That is our budget.
Okay.
Any other questions for Lou?
Just to reach back for members of the public who don't know about this, and frankly, some posts on social media. Your committee also looked at the cost for renovating the current high school Can you just tell us what the result of that was?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We did. We looked at a lot of different options. We looked at relocating, we looked at staying on site versus going to CCMS, going to the YMCA. And I know there's an inclination to always say, well, it must cost less to keep the existing footprint. And most of us who are homeowners would say, oh, I don't knock down my house to upgrade, right? But when it comes to schools, they do have a shelf life. The school's more than twice the size of what it needs to be, or, thereabouts. We're heating and cooling that footprint. There's a lot of the building materials used at the time, asbestos, PCBs, other things are still in that school. We don't know what's behind the walls, and the layout is subpar. So it doesn't fit with today's educational advocacy. You add all those things together, and then you add in what's the cost going to be. And actually, Chris can certainly speak to it. He's here tonight from Westfield. He's very experienced in the industry, but I'm sure he'll tell you the same thing, which is renovation is not necessarily a cost-cutting measure. Many times it adds, because once you open up the wall, now you own it. So you may have estimated that wall to be $10 million, but now you're into a $20 million renovation, and at that point, you don't have a choice. When you're talking about a clean site and a clean slate, it's very easy to estimate, because you know what you're dealing with, and for most contractors, that's what they prefer. So we did bring that out with the architect. We looked at it extensively with the committee, but ultimately the decision was it was looking like almost the exact same cost, if not more, to do the renovation. So all things being equal, while I know people sometimes have a great affinity for the old building that's there, fond memories, it just doesn't work when you break it down to the data.
I want to just follow up. That was a great question because I wanted to add to it. So, for example, many people might have been in the auditorium and maybe they say it's good enough, like, could we keep that and build in and around it? And even if we were to save that piece, then we're sort of twisting and doing acrobats to build on a site that's, less than ideal, or we could save one piece, but it doesn't make sense in terms of layout. So we really did look at and really push for it to be the most economical for the community to pay for. And while it might have made sense, it didn't make sense architecturally to save it because it wouldn't fit in the way if we needed to save one thing to build all around it. I don't know if that's explaining it well, but it didn't make sense to say, and maybe the auditorium's not a good example, but if we tried to save one item and work around it, it wasn't going to work either.
Yeah, and one last thing that's a key component that's often lost in the discussion is swing space.
Right.
So you have to house the students while you have this construction going on.
Excellent.
And one of the walls we kept running into is, where do you house the students? Most people don't want trailers. We didn't have a lot of good options. I know people say CCMS, but as you've seen, we're looking to advance our athletic facility there, right? So then that gets pushed. And we knew that accommodation, more money would have to be put into a school that we're eventually going to mothball anyway.
Right.
So when you look at all aspects of the project, and I just, so the public knows, we didn't take it lightly when we were looking to, make this recommendation to the council, the school committee, and others. Like, we really did look at this. But when it comes down to it, it's the most logical decision.
I agree. I also think keeping it right at the Columbia Street location is very important, and I think the flip-flopping of the field in the high school and what they're going to build for the lacrosse and football practice fields and a little park area is going to really, invigorate that area of Columbia Street. There really isn't a community park with any sort of playground. The Guild isn't really set up in that way, so I think it's a great win-win, actually, in terms of flip-flopping and getting a new high school, eliminating the millions at Curtis Corner for a swing space that we really heard from families that their students would not want to graduate from 8th grade and then be retained for 2 more years in the school that really should be knocked down. So I think the process was robust and lots of things were vetted and explored, and I think we all agree that we need a new high school for a lot of reasons, and this is a great project that we need the community to get behind.
So Luke, quick question for you. What's next in the process after we approve this? Does anything come back to us? Are we straight to bond?
Right now, nothing really. That'll get in power of the town manager, and the school committee's already passed this, so Phil can do his thing. We'll submit for the 17th. We're really now focused and shifting to working with the OPM, who's just getting onboarded now, Chris and his team, to start advancing things like a new website, so that people stay informed and remain informed through the process. Looking at the A&E team, the construction management team that we'd have to hire and turnkey pretty quickly should a bond be approved. So we have a lot of things to do in the interim. It's great timing, so it allows us over the coming months to kind of get prepared. And then our focus is going to be good information, getting it out to the public and making sure people feel involved and informed.
Excellent. So full steam ahead after this vote, the bond referendum.
Yep.
Sounds good.
I know you had talked in the past, excuse me, about being in touch with RIDE and trying to sort of get a jump on the Stage 2 application. Have you got any sense from them on how long they think it'll be for a turnaround?
Generally, what they're saying is 8 to 10 weeks. It could be more, depending on, they take vacations too. They have various levels of projects that they're working on. But my hope is that in September, October, we'll have a response back, at least initially. Just so everyone understands, though, they'll make a recommendation to the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education. So that body ultimately kind of ratifies or endorses the opinion or recommendation from RIDE. So what I'm hoping for from RIDE is saying, this is going to be our recommendation, which I will tell you almost 100% of the time the council agrees with. So we'll have, what I'm trying to give is some surety to the voters. The more information, the better. I think the voters deserve as much information as possible. If we can get that from RIDE, it gives the voters some sense of, okay, nothing's ever written in stone, but we know we're in good shape to get a certain amount of reimbursement, 52%, 55%, whatever it is. And that equates to a certain number, and they can bank on that. I think we all want clarity of process.
I think one of the things that I'd really like to share with the public is, like Deb said, it was a very robust process, and we really didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out. But for me, at the end, well, not really at the end, but when we learned that we could actually do the building in the same location, or at Columbia Street, that just made it so much easier. And mostly for the kids, because when you think about it, would have been just really awful and demoralizing to have to send them back to Curtis Corner. And so now we have a group of people that are really excited, and I think that'll make a big difference.
So in terms of maybe getting some RIDE feedback, with the last Stage 2, we did hear from them about 4 weeks in with a list of questions. They had questions about the project. I think that will be helpful, so we'll know if you submit July 15th and we hear something by Labor Day, we will have a good sense of kind of where they're headed. But this is a completely different project. I mean, having a new high school is a very different dive into the project versus an addition over at Curtis Corner and all these other things. I mean, I think the project is super narrow in terms of really what we want. We really want a brand new high school, and this is what we're proposing. So I think a lot of things will look better, but I think we'll get some RIDE information really quickly, in 4 weeks. They came back with a list of questions, so we can see where we're at and then gather that information and hand it in again. So I think we're in a better and different spot.
We expect approval, Luke.
Oh, yeah.
We've been working with.
Yeah, I fully expect,
But remember,
we're going to get something.
Construction,
It's just
it was
a matter of what it is.
escalation of construction costs. They had all those.
In the event they give feedback, that wanting more information, does that toll the deadline time for us? Or do we still have to get it back in by that time?
For the comments that come back?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Let's say this gets submitted soon after this vote, comes back to us, doesn't get approved, comes back with comments to make revisions to submit again. Does that toll the time? Or do we have to
Comments are always a part of the process,
Yeah.
right? They're gonna find fault with something, or they want more information. I almost guarantee, and again, Chris is in the room, he can speak to it, but there's almost always a comments that come back, right? It's a matter of how much and how fast we turn those around. Typically, it's just a request for supplemental information.
Right.
They're still reviewing through the process. The faster we move to turn around that information, and you all know Phil and his team, they've been excellent. I have no doubt he'll turn around very quickly. So I think it's to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good marker to say, hey, they're reviewing it? Yes. It'll give us, but I'm confident at this point, we'll have comments by October, and we will, where it's going to fall on the percentages of what's reimbursable for what is still a little bit up in the air, but we know we're 50% plus. We're over half.
Right.
One thing that's really interesting to me, they're still projecting a declining enrollment. I mean, it says overall something like a 16% decline at the high school till 2027 overall. So if we're at 800, we're going to have 16% of that. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But there's a substantial decline in enrollment still coming. I don't know when they say it's going to level off, because it's in the slides, but I didn't look at it. But it's crazy.
I do think that this is going to bring a lot of kids, hopefully, new.
Right. They still project a 9.3% decline by 27-28 school year, district-wide. Isn't that crazy?
Well, they did say, though, in that report, I think later, that there's a lot, there's a lot of belief that we will get more children. Hopefully, we're going to attract some families, too.
Right.
But there's speculation. I mean,
Well, NASDAQ's generally right, but I think, and we could attract, but we will attract from other districts. I think their population predictions are really based on South Kingstown birth rate and such. So any growth is going to have to come from us recruiting from South County communities for students who want to come, because we have great facilities, athletics, and teachers.
Right.
Right? We have the whole thing, which we've always had pieces of that. We can all say we've had great teachers. In spite of not having the best facilities, many of us sent our kids to high school and graduated from. So we'll have like we did in planning board, fast, cheap, and good. We can get all three.
I think we're getting all three with
Yeah,
this.
I think we're getting all three.
think so. Yeah.
Luke is proving it can be done. He's going to get it done.
Right. Don't tell Jamie Rabbit.
All I need is a vote.
All right,
Need a
let's
vote.
take this vote.
All
I
right.
hear a motion on this.
I make a motion to approve the Stage 2 facility plan as presented by Director Luke Murray.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Luke. All right, it's going to move us to item D, a resolution to unseal that portion of the minutes of the closed executive session held on April 25, 2022, relative to the purchase of property on Ministerial Road. Amy Goins, I'm going to refer to you on this.
The council was provided that portion of the closed executive minutes from April 25th, 2022, that are proposed to be unsealed at this time in connection with the impending closing of the property at issue. So we're requesting the council's approval to unseal that portion of the closed executive session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going
So-
to bring us,
Where will those minutes be posted so the community could read them?
The clerk is going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe now that these closed executive session minutes are effectively open, I think it's an amendment to the already posted open minutes from that meeting. I don't know if that's the procedure we followed in the past, but they're available for public review in the same manner that any open session minutes would be.
So I can certainly say, we can say that we unanimously voted to authorize a purchase and sales with changes made by the town solicitor for the purchase of property identified, blah, 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 on Ministerial Road from the South Kingstown Land Trust for the construction of the EMS facility, for anyone who's listening.
those are the minutes from the executive session that pertains to this that
Yep.
we're releasing to the public? All right.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to move to item E. Mark Capuano, come on up. Want to walk us through this one?
Yes, thank you, Council President. Before you is just two existing pilot agreements for Camp Jury and the other one for the South Kingston Land Trust. So each year, we'll review these pilot agreements, and basically just what changes is some language within the pilot agreement. That's payment in lieu of taxes. And typically, it's just the fiscal year and also the tax rate if that changes. It's a non-reval year, so there's been no adjustment to assessed values. That is something that can change in a reval year, but not in this case.
All right. Questions for Mark?
Motion-
It's an easy one.
Motion to approve item
Second.
9E.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Council President.
All right, it's going to bring us to Town Manager's Report. Jim?
Thank you, Council President. I'll be brief as well. Anytime there's a large event in town, usually like to brief the council and the residents of what took place. And so July 4th fireworks display, it's been going on for as long as anyone can remember, but that was a major event here in town. The 5 of you were there, so you saw that there was a large crowd, one of the largest crowds that we've had in a long time, I think because other towns chickened out and they canceled their fireworks display, but we didn't. So that was a good thing. But it's the second time in the past couple of weeks where the rain held off right at the exact moment. So it was a great fireworks display. We estimate there were several thousand on the field itself, several thousand more in town. The Parks and Rec really pulled it off. The police department, tremendous resources. EMS was there with their rescues. In the event we needed someone. Union Fire provided the fire trucks. Rhode Island Emergency Management provided the command post. There were only a couple of very minor incidents that night. People were very well behaved, and that was it. It was pulled off in a great fashion. Second item is an update on the municipal court. So on March 27th of 2023, Ms. Susan Perkins was interviewed and was appointed as the municipal court judge, and the court is still not operational at this point, but as of June 28th, Ms. Perkins did withdraw her appointment to be considered to be appointed as the municipal court judge. So we are working on it now to get it operational again. C, we don't need, because Luke just briefed us on the school building committee. There's just one other thing that I will add. On the Downtown Village Revitalization Project is scheduled for this Thursday, July 13th, in this room at 6 p.m. This goes over all the ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act money, that the town has dedicated for all the villages, Peacedale, Wakefield, Kingston, Matunic, and West Kingston. And last week there was a work session held here in this room. It was great. There were 40, 50 people in the room, really spirited discussion. So if all those who are here now, come to the one on the 13th so we can finalize these plans. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, that's going to move us to the Town Solicitor's Report. Amy Goins?
On the first matter, the litigation update on 72 Sophia Court, our office provided a memo to the council on this matter indicating or clarifying that Superior Court litigation is pending. In fact, it has been since last August, so coming up on almost a year. The defendant is now represented by counsel. I believe his attorney entered either last week or maybe within the last 10 days. So the council has the memo. At this point, because it's in active litigation, that's probably all I want to say in open session on this matter. But our office is and will be working with the defendant through his counsel to resolve this. I would note, in the Superior Court, zoning enforcement matters that don't involve urgent matters of public safety are typically not given priority. However, that may change in January with the new land use court. And certainly, had we been able to initiate this case in municipal court last year, I think we could have gotten it on track for a faster resolution. But at this point, we're in the discovery process, and our office is working towards resolution.
So does Mr. Russell, who came last week, is he looped into all?
Is he in the audience here? I wanna
My
invite him up if he
understanding is he's been in contact with Jamie Gorman, the building official.
Okay, very frustrated, and he has a right to be frustrated with all the circumstances, so great. Thank you.
On the next item, procedures to amend the charter, we did not provide a memo for the council on this, but I understand the council would like some understanding of its options for potentially amending the charter with regard to the threshold, the signature threshold required for to force a budget referendum. And the charter does provide that amendments shall be adopted in the manner prescribed in the state constitution. And under the Home Rule Amendment to the state constitution, you, as the town council, have the power to propose charter amendments. So some municipalities have, say, every 10 years, a charter review commission. We don't have any requirement like that in our charter. You can review and address issues in the charter as they arise. We did conduct an informal review of other municipal charters to see whether the 200-person signature requirement is in line with similar thresholds in other municipalities adjusting for population. So in South Kingstown, 200 people is roughly equivalent to 1% of registered voters. We found that it was more common to have a requirement of 5 or even 10%. As an example, Charlestown has the same 200-person requirement, but because of the population discrepancy, that equates to about 3% of their voter population. So that's just, verbal information for the council. We certainly can provide a memo along these lines if you want, but the bottom line is the council has the power to begin the process towards amending the charter if you desire.
Thank you, Amy. And I think, yes, we'd prefer a memo that sort of outlines different options, far more sort of comparative as to other towns, not just
Sure.
one or two, maybe all different clients that you guys represent.
Yep,
So
we'll
we get a further
work
understanding.
on that. We'll have that for the next meeting.
Excellent.
And as to private roads, we did provide a memo to the council on that. I would note, we did not mark this memorandum privileged, and it doesn't relate to pending litigation. So if the council wants to release the memo on private roads to the public, I think the council should direct that it be released if that's what you want. But the bottom line on roads is this, you as the council don't have the power or jurisdiction to make legal determinations on whether a road is public or private. Only the Superior Court can do that. So, right, the manager explained the numbers on roads that the town considers private, the town considers public. So, and the memo lays out how the defined ways by statute and in common law that a road can be legally deemed a public road. So, to the extent that any residents are contesting the town's determination, it's our recommendation that they file a petition in Superior Court to have the Superior Court determine that. And that is a fact-intensive and I would say expensive inquiry. Never mind expensive on the maintenance. That would require title search. There would probably be an extensive discovery process. I think individuals can represent themselves, but in a matter of road ownership, I think they'd be well advised to contact their own attorney. I don't think the council is set up to make case-by-case determinations, and ultimately they wouldn't carry legal effect. So that was the gist of our memo, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I think releasing the memo is the right thing to give the community all the information that we have.
I agree.
And then, anyone who's here, I know there's a lot of people here. I mean, that's what we've been consistently saying is hire an attorney and investigate your individual circumstances. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't feel good to hear that, but that's what we've been advised to tell you, so we're just giving you that. And I know that Rich Bourbonnais has been really great about answering lots of questions and responding to everybody, and that's where we're at.
So since we have everyone here, and there's been a lot of discussion about different questions, specific questions, I want to raise some of them to the extent maybe you can answer them or not. So I think the memo, there's a presumption that when a road is private, it is private, and you have to take it to the court to sort of rebut that. Now, there's been a number of questions about what about liability that arises on that road in question. Do we know the answer to that? I mean, for example, if someone slips and falls on a private road, who is liable for that? Would we know the answer to that?
That's all, case by case. It's hard to say yes or no, but in general, the landowner is responsible. So it's not the town.
Right, so more specifically, I think the question is, would the town be liable?
Could there be some liability in the scenario that the resident described with the town? I'm sure the town would be one of the parties sued. Would the town ultimately be found liable? That's
a court matter.
Not possible to say.
not possible to say. That would really be a case-by-case determination. I think to the extent there are any kind of general questions about liability to that effect, I would recommend consulting the trust. But, you know, in general, the owner of property is liable. So if it, you know, if it's a road that's not owned by the town, that could, you know, I would think the liability would be on the landowners rather than the town.
And the
Likewise,
landowners.
likewise, there's several people who have come forward and said, I know I don't own the town, own the road, it's in my deed that doesn't have that, so they're not liable either, because several people asked that same question. Right? So if I slip and fall on Shadbush or? Shadberry, there's a shade bush, that's why. At Shadberry, if nobody owns the road, I can't, I would have to be me figuring out who to sue, correct?
Yeah, I would just say it's possible that someone could have a legal interest in a roadway, even if it's not mentioned in the deed. That's a legal possibility.
Okay.
And that interest could be determined by adjoining properties, continuous use.
Doing title research.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's possible that a legal interest in a roadway was in a deed of a predecessor in interest and just not
Copied over. Yeah, they're gonna have to go every deed back. Mhm.
I think mine went back to 1904.
Yours went back to 1904? Oh.
So, and what are, you say the hurdle to prove to the court that such road is public and not private, what sort of factors do they consider? I'm sure that's entailed in your memo, but can you talk to those?
Yeah, you know, you would have to look at the history of when the road was originally laid out. You know, any statements made by the subdivider, any statements made by the town at that point, and then the history of public and private use since then in the, whether it's decades or, you know, it would all be fact-intensive.
Okay. And to have standing to bring a suit to do it, you have to use the road continuous, be adjacent to it?
You would have to claim an interest in the roadway. So the town wouldn't even have standing to bring such a suit because we're expressly disclaiming interest in the roadway. We're saying we don't own this. So you would have standing if you were claiming an interest in the roadway.
Okay. Let me ask you a few separate questions. So, on the authority of the council to pick and choose which private roads it wants to maintain or plow, we have the authority to do that?
You know, that's really a political question versus a legal question. I think, you know, you can open yourself up to claims if you pick and choose, but as far as, you know, the authority to pick and choose, are we going to maintain or plow some private roads legally? I think you can do that. It does become a question of, you know, should you?
I don't recall saying that we were gonna go through and pick and choose. I don't know where that came from.
Well, from the audience.
Oh, okay, because I don't think we ever said we were gonna go back and do that, so.
No. I'm suggesting that if you're doing all or none, there's no discrimination. If you're
Correct.
selecting individual ones to do, you're potentially discriminating. But the classification you're doing it on is a low threshold to meet, so you could probably get over it easy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, there's nothing in the law that explicitly says you can or can't choose a subset of private roads. So I would say it's within the council's discretionary power if you want to, but that's legal advice versus political advice. We're here for legal advice, what you legally can and can't do.
Mhm.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions? I just want to pose this question as well. We talked about this months ago when we first brought this up. The reliance factor of relying on it over time, almost, I don't know, not changing, I don't know. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Typically, a stopple, you know, I'll say, like in the land use context, estoppel doesn't apply against a municipality. So if a town, for example, has issued a permit in error, someone can't claim I relied on that. You know, if something was done in violation of the town's own law or ordinance, private individuals aren't entitled to rely on that. I think that's the same would apply here. I think it would be very difficult for someone to prevail in court on a claim of reliance when the town was under no legal obligation to maintain these roads for years or decades. I don't think the reliance argument would be successful.
Gotcha. All right, any other questions for Amy? All right, so at this point, we have a pretty comprehensive memorandum from our legal counsel, which we're going to release to the public, and we're hoping that once it gets in the hands of you all, that can bring some light as to clarity to some of the questions you have, because these are complicated legal questions. We don't have anything on the agenda tonight as far as an action item, so we will not be taking action with respect to whether to plow all the roads, whether to go back to what we were doing before, so right now, in effect, the decision that we had a few months ago which was to discontinue the private roads that we were plowing and maintaining is in effect right now. Just want to clarify that. So, we're going to move on now to item 12, communications. Item A is an email dated June 27, 2023 from Sharon Henderson, Military Recognition Project Chair, 300th Anniversary Steering Committee, requesting a proclamation recognizing August 18th as Brigadier General Isaac Peace Rodman Day. Sharon, you are here. Want to come up on this?
Council President, I have a prepared statement. Sharon Henderson, 25 Pleasant Street, Wakefield. I have a prepared statements to read and to convince you. As a Military Recognition Project Chair of South Kingston's 300th Anniversary Committee, I thank you for inviting me to speak. I stand before you today to emphasize the importance of commemorating the life and sacrifice of Brigadier General Isaac Peace Rodman during this, our town's 300th anniversary. He was a dedicated public servant, having served as town council president, tax assessor, school committee member, state representative, and senator. As the highest-ranking Rhode Island officer to die in battle, it should be noted he was the father of 6 children and died at 39 years old. He symbolizes the bravery and dedication of our town's sons and daughters who fought during the Civil War. By honoring General Rodman, we pay tribute to all individuals from South Kingstown who served and sacrificed during this pivotal time in our nation's history. Commemorating General Rodman's life during our 300th anniversary year and each year thereafter serves several essential purposes. It highlights the significance of community engagement and public service, inspiring future generations to embrace similar values of service, leadership, and civic responsibility. By celebrating General Rodman's legacy, it strengthens our town's identity and fosters a shared sense of pride and purpose. In conclusion, commemorating his life and sacrifice is not only a fitting tribute to a remarkable individual, but it also serves as a catalyst for reflection, inspiration, and community cohesion. Therefore, we invite you to join us to celebrate as a community in a tribute ceremony to Brigadier General Isaac Peace Rodman at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, where we will rededicate the monument after 139 years in the Riverside Cemetery, Saturday, August the 19th at 9:30 a.m., followed by a reception with refreshments and period music on the lawn of the Isaac Peace Rodman House. That is across from the safety complex at the corner of Saugatucket and Kingstown Road. We have just learned that Secretary of State Greg Amore will be the keynote speaker at our ceremony, thanks to Teresa Tanzi. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Sharon? It's an easy one. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do I hear a motion on this?
Motion to accept 12A?
Approve 12A.
Approve 12A. I didn't know if it was like accept.
Second.
Do I have a motion and a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Sharon, thank you. See you on August 19th. All right, it's going to bring us to communication item B, an email dated June 27, 2023, from Andrew Martinez, tendering his resignation from the Historic District Commission.
I move that we accept Andrew Martinez's resignation and direct the town clerk to thank him for his service to the community.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes, and that brings us to the end here.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. This meeting is over. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.